in your own lane. See your Metro Detroit Mercury dealer today.
Kids, whirlwinds of pure energy, stopping only occasionally for a cheeseburger and fries. They make us laugh. They turn us gray. They please us. They worry us. We're left proud, scared, and shaking our heads. Sometimes, all at the same time. But these amazing creatures we have created, isn't it good to know there's total health care? A little calm in this storm we call our children.
The 16-valve, twin-cam Grand Am SE. Built with the enduring strength of high-performance steel. Because only the strong survive. The Grand Am was solid form design.
GM employees and family members take advantage of a new $750 cash bonus on the solid form Grand Am SE at the #1 Pontiac GMC dealer in the country, Jim Causley.
Who brought down the most infamous drug lord, killing Pablo, Sunday, 10 Eastern.
This is a CNN special report. Election 2000, a race too close to call. Governor Bush leads Florida's recount, but the numbers could keep changing for days.
It's frustrating, it's confusing, it's perplexing, and it's all worth it because it's our democracy.
Tonight, a close look at why the presidential election isn't over yet. The questions about a crucial county.
This ballot is Thursday.
Why Palm Beach County is ground zero in the battle for Florida.
Democracy.
Plus, the escalating war of words.
I believe that their actions to try to presumptively crown themselves the victors, to try to put in place a transition, run the risk of dividing the American people.
The Democrats who are politicizing and distorting these events risk doing so at the expense of our democracy.
The strategies and potential dangers in the battles being waged by the Bush and Gore campaigns. Tonight, we hear from CNN senior analyst Jeff Greenfield, senior political analyst Bill Schneider, and legal analyst Greta Van Susteren, and a panel of voters from Palm Beach County, Florida. Now, from Washington, CNN's Judy Woodruff, and at CNN election headquarters in Atlanta, Bernard Shaw.
Thank you for joining us. Here we are 2 days after election night, and we still do not know who will be moving into the White House come January.
And it now appears the uncertainty about the winner of the presidential election could continue for days or longer. Republican George W. Bush still holds a slight lead over Democrat Al Gore in Florida, according to recount numbers being compiled by state and county election officials, and in a separate tally being done by the Associated Press. Now, as you can see, the AP's numbers are very close right now, and we're going to keep them on the screen for most of this hour. Also, Governor Bush has nearly overtaken the vice president in the nationwide popular vote. The gap closed to less than 200,000 votes today. By one estimate, there are at least 2.5 million uncounted votes still out there. It could take even longer to resolve the election if recounts are demanded in a number of states where the vote is close or if lawsuits are filed. And that brings us back to Florida. Patty Davis is standing by in Tallahassee with the latest on the painstakingly slow process of recounting.
Well, Bernie, the Associated Press is reporting that 66 of 67 counties have come up with their numbers. They're showing that Governor Bush still leads by 229 votes. They're getting those numbers because they're polling the counties directly. But the official Florida numbers could still be several days, if not a week away. Calling the Florida recount democracy in action, Florida officials announced so far Texas Governor George W. Bush is still ahead of Vice President Al Gore.
A difference of 1,784 votes.
The unofficial certified results are a mix of old and new recounts from 53 of Florida's 67 counties and the old numbers from the rest. The actual recount may not be known until Tuesday, when Florida law requires the results be certified. Still to come, absentee ballots from overseas, which must be counted by November 17th. Former Secretaries of State Warren Christopher and James Baker, Gore and Bush's designated recount observers, met with Florida officials Thursday.
It is certainly the position of Governor George W. Bush that we would like to see this process carried out in a very transparent, open, deliberate way, as expeditiously as possible, of course, given the national interest, but in keeping, fully in keeping with the requirements of the law of Florida.
The Gore campaign highlighted complaints from Palm Beach County voters who say the butterfly ballot there caused them to choose Reform Party candidate Pat Buchanan instead of Al Gore.
We've come to believe that there are serious and substantial irregularities resulting from the ballot used only in one county, that ballot was confusing and illegal.
Now, Florida officials say that they will be working on Veterans Day, normally a federal holiday, but they're going to be here anyways, trying to keep this process moving along. I'm Patty Davis, CNN Live in Tallahassee, Florida.
Thank you, Patty. Adding to the controversy in Florida are demands that thousands of people be allowed to re-vote because of confusion about the design of the ballots that Patty mentioned. It is an especially big issue in that Palm Beach County. Our national correspondent Martin Savage is standing by in West Palm Beach. Martin.
Good evening to you, Judy. It was announced earlier this evening by the election supervisor of this county, Palm Beach County, that there will be another recount that will begin at 9 a.m. on Saturday morning. There are actually going to be two recounts. One will be conducted manually or by hand of 1% of the total votes that were cast in the presidential election in this county. And then there will be a second county-wide recount, that is, that will be conducted by machine. Now, you may ask, why will they only count 1% of the votes by hand? Well, that's about 4,000 ballots. It's a lengthy process, and in a sense, it will give them a sampling to see if there are any gross errors that are discovered. If that is the case, it could lay the groundwork for a complete county-wide recount by hand. Nobody wants to think of that right now at this particular point. It's basically an attempt by county officials to appease both Republican and Democrat requests. Either way, the results are not expected to be announced until sometime on Monday. In the meantime, on the streets of West Palm Beach tonight, people are not only wanting to make sure their votes are counted, but that their voices are heard.
Bush is a cheater.
Voters who went to the polls on Tuesday took to the streets Thursday in West Palm Beach, Florida. More than 1,000 supporters of Vice President Al Gore, led by the Reverend Jesse Jackson, demonstrated outside the downtown government building, demanding another election in the county. Chanting "Gore got more" and "Re-vote," Jackson and the protesters contend the county's election ballot was confusing for voters, a number of whom now believe they incorrectly cast their ballot for the wrong presidential candidate.
The issue here today is not about black and white. It's about wrong and right.
At least 19,000 ballots in Palm Beach County were thrown out by election officials because they had been punched twice for the same race, nullifying them. The Gore campaign contends the ballots in Palm Beach County were illegal. Reform Party presidential candidate Pat Buchanan, who may have benefited from the confusion, blames what he calls inept ballot design.
Well, I think we got some votes in Palm Beach County, but I don't doubt the number of those ballots that those votes that were cast for me probably were intended for Vice President Gore.
A number of lawsuits have now been filed in Florida State Court by Palm Beach voters challenging Tuesday's election results. One of those voters, now turned legal challenger, is Andre Fladel.
I went into a place expecting a simple, fair ballot. I got a crossword puzzle.
More than a puzzle. Voters in this coastal Florida area are finding themselves in the uncomfortable eye of a growing political hurricane. And outside of the elections board here in Palm Beach County, there is still a crowd of people that are hanging on tonight. They're divided into two groups on both sides of the street, Republicans on one side, Democrats on the other. It is clear in this community, 2 days after the election, like much of the nation, they are still politically divided. Judy?
Martin, do you have a sense of to what extent those folks who are out there have been organized to get there, and how much of this is just a spontaneous show of concern about what's going on?
Well, that is difficult to judge at this particular point. Obviously, earlier in the day, you would have to say that that was an organized event. As for the people that are hanging out here, many of them appear to be posturing for the purposes of the television cameras that are here. But there are also people driving by, waving signs, holding up T-shirts that have now appeared, demanding a revote. Some of that does truly seem to be spontaneous. Judy?
All right. CNN's Martin Savage in West Palm Beach. Thanks. Bernie.
The presidential candidates kept away from microphones today, letting their surrogates do the talking, and that talk is getting angrier. Candy Crowley is with Governor Bush's team in Austin, Texas, and John King is keeping watch on the Gore camp in Nashville. John, do the vice president's people still think he can pull out a victory?
They certainly do, Bernie. Indeed, the more they review Florida law, the more they hear developments like Marty Savage just said about plans for at least a partial recount in Palm Beach County, the more optimistic they grow that they will actually end up being declared the winner of Florida and the winner of the White House. But they don't think this will be over anytime soon. They are plotting a strategy, and this is an increasingly bitter, both political and legal fight. They're plotting a strategy that calls for this to go on perhaps for several weeks. The campaign office here is shutting down. The vice president back in Washington tonight. They will open new offices there. They are trying to raise $3 to $5 million to pay for this legal struggle now in the state of Florida. They believe, A, they want to recount in 4 big counties, 1.8 million votes in those counties, 1.8 million votes cast in those counties. They want those ballots recounted by hand, and they're considering a big legal challenge in Palm Beach County, where there is the dispute over the Buchanan ballot that has been discussed in this program. Meanwhile, on the political front, the Gore team voicing outright anger and bitterness, saying they're annoyed with what they hear out of Austin, Texas. The Gore line is, the vice president still leads in the popular vote, still leads in the electoral college vote, yet out of Austin you hear talk that Governor Bush is thinking of naming a cabinet.
I believe that their actions to try to presumptively crown themselves the victors, to try to put in place a transition, run the risk of dividing the American people and creating a sense of confusion.
Now the campaign office shutting down here, the vice president will go back to Washington. One reason is he will go back to working at the White House. His schedule, his public comments from his team will now come from there, although they are also sending a campaign team of political strategists into Florida to assist the large team of lawyers already there. Again, they think this could go on for several weeks, and they promise not to leave any stone unturned as they review their legal options in the state of Florida. Bernie?
John, please stand by for just a moment. We go now to Candy Crowley in Austin, where this afternoon 3 top officials of Governor Bush's campaign team returned fire on the Democrats.
Bernie, you're absolutely right. For all of the annoyance and how upset the Gore team is with the Bush camp, you can turn it right around and say that's exactly how the Bush camp feels about the Gore team.
The Democrats, who are politicizing and distorting these events, risk doing so at the expense of our democracy. One of the options that they seem to be looking at is new elections. Our democratic process calls for a vote on Election Day. It does not call for us to continue voting until someone likes the outcome. Throughout this process, it's important that no party to this election act in a precipitous manner or distort an existing voting pattern in an effort to misinform the public.
The Bush camp is looking with a wary eye at all of the talk out of the Gore camp about legal action. Late this evening, one senior aide told me, we think if the recount goes our way, and they expect it will be time for the vice president to respect the will of the people of Florida. Bernie?
What about that point, John?
Well, Bernie, the Gore campaign believes it has every legal right to demand these recounts, and I think if you add to what Marty Savage said earlier tonight, we may not actually be at such a dispute. If Palm Beach County is going to do at least a partial recount, it appears we're going to have several days here before the results are known. In all the comments today, even as they criticize the Bush strategy, Gore campaign say if they believe this is a fair recount and that Governor Bush is still ahead, that the vice president will concede the election. But they make the case with the margin so slim that in Palm Beach County alone, there are more than enough votes in question to clearly throw the election to the vice president, and they will continue to press that case until they've exhausted any and all legal avenues.
Now, this is a question I've been anxious to ask both of you. And step back for a moment and put some flesh on your responses based on all the conversations you've been having with your respective newsmakers. In this Florida showdown, do both sides realize that someone is going to have to blink? Candy?
Well, Bernie, sure. It's just at the Bush camp, they think it's going to be Gore that has to blink, and I'm sure John will tell you vice versa. I mean, one of the things that a senior aide said to me tonight was, look, you know, there are some very close races in Iowa and Wisconsin. There's a recount going on in part of New Mexico. You know, if we wanted to, we could drag this thing out forever, but at some point, there has to be a mark beyond which you won't go. They believe in this camp that the mark ought to be the recount in Florida.
John?
Well, Bernie, the Gore camp now predicting anyway that Florida will turn its way, and they do expect that the Bush campaign will then go looking to challenge the results elsewhere. In both parties, if you call around Washington today, especially in both parties, there are people wishing that both candidates in both campaigns would be quiet. And even some Democrats who had questioned whether the vice president was wise in exploring this strategy, now that he is ahead in the popular vote, now that they have read the reports about the election in Florida, they're giving him what one called, quote, wide latitude to explore this challenge in Florida. But the adults, as we like to call them in both parties, wish both candidates would shut up during the process, essentially, and be quiet, because they worry about the effect on the country, and they worry that whoever is ultimately awarded the presidency will be criticized as illegitimate from the other side.
Precisely the point I was going to raise, Candy and John. Candy, do the people in the Bush camp fear a possible public backlash? Same question for you too, John King, that the public will summarily become fed up with this process?
Sure. I mean, I think you always have to worry about that. But again, you know, when you believe in the rightness of your cause, that's not something, you know, that comes into their thought process about their own camp. They look at it as, you know, the fault of the Gore camp. But again, they note that, you know, this could go on forever, that there are irregularities in any number of jurisdictions, that it's a normal thing that happens. When you point out that it's not normally down to one state and one district, they still say, look, you know, you take a look at the lost ballots, the double-counted ballots in Palm Beach. Even if you take into account the percentage of voters has gone up, from 96, they say that the amount of double-counted ballots that were thrown out in Palm Beach County was about the same as it was this year. So, you know, in direct answer to your question, yes, they do worry about the effect on the country, but obviously they think it's Al Gore that's doing the damage, and it's hard for them to see that they are in any way.
And the view from your side, John?
Pretty much the same, Bernie. The Gore people believe that how can Governor Bush be opposed to a fair recount of the vote in Florida? But the finger pointing back and forth, you see the public relations campaign now geared just to the point you were making. Will the public become exasperated with this? From the Bush side, you hear them saying Al Gore is a sore loser, and he's involving all these lawyers. Now, you know, that's journalists and used car salesmen perhaps held in low esteem, much like lawyers in this political debate. So you see the Gore team, on the other hand, now looking for prominent Democrats to step forward and say he has every right to question this. There are a lot of legitimate questions here. Former President Jimmy Carter among those now stepping forward to help the Gore make the case that the country should just have a little patience and a little calm, and that this is an issue worth exploring in greater detail.
John King, Candy Crowley, thanks very, very much. Judy?
We're lucky we have those too. U.S. Attorney General Janet Reno says she has had a number of calls and letters about the Florida vote, and that she will review any complaint. But for now, she says there's no reason for federal authorities to get involved.
I want to be very careful that we don't do anything that politicizes what is a very important moment in American history, when we should all be working together to see that the voice of the American people has properly been heard.
Reno says among the complaints she has received is a challenge by the NAACP regarding the way the Florida balloting was conducted.
There's more to come on this CNN special report, Election 2000. We'll examine the legal issues surrounding the Florida recount with CNN's Greta Van Susteren. The GOP in 2 more states where the tally is tight is willing to launch recounts in those races. CNN's Bill Schneider will have that. And Leon Harris is standing by in Palm Beach County, Florida. Leon.
Bernie, I just arrived here in West Palm Beach, and coming up, we're going to be talking with some West Palm Beach County voters and find out what they think about the election that would never end and the ballot box boondoggle just ahead.
You say you want to take a big vacation this year.
as long as it is within reason. What is within reason to you? Is riding a waterfall down the face of a Mayan temple through shark-filled waters within reason? Is dancing beneath a dome of golden seashells within reason? Is uncovering the royal towers of a lost city that has risen from the sea within reason? This year, will you expand your definition of what is within reason to include Atlantis? Atlantis, once upon our time.
Call 1-800-ATLANTIS or your travel professional now for January travel specials.
Life is uncertain. Bring good insurance. Fireman's Fund.
You can't live without water. Can you live without art? The Bold Book of Kohler.
You may not understand bubble technology, but the architects of the internet do. Agilent uses bubbles to help optical networks move at mind-blowing speeds. How does it work? Don't ask. Just enjoy. Agilent Technologies. Dreams made real.
My Personal Shopper, the latest online shopping tool, only from Lands.End.com.
In the 2 days since the general election, eight lawsuits have been filed by Florida voters because of voting irregularities. An additional lawsuit was withdrawn today in federal court to be combined with yet another lawsuit next week. Well, we turn now to CNN legal analyst Greta Van Susteren, who is standing by in Tallahassee. Greta, how difficult will it be for any of these lawsuits to get past first base, if you will?
You know, Judy, that's the most incredible question because no one knows the answer to it. And let me give you an example. In 1994, when all those tobacco cases were filed, nobody thought the tobacco lawyers had a chance of winning. Of course, we've seen it happen that they did indeed win. In this particular case, once again, we are in uncharted waters. We have no idea. What they must do is show under Florida law that there was a substantial irregularity under the Florida election law. If they prove that to a state court judge, the next step is to prove to the judge that it raises a reasonable doubt whether the election manifests the will of the people. And the question is, will that persuade a judge? No one has any idea right now because this is something we've never seen before.
Greta, who are the state court judges who would be making these decisions? Are these elected judges? Are they appointed judges, or what?
You know, I'm not sure, Judy. I think they're elected in the state of Florida, but let me tell you what lawyers do is that we try to shop around a little bit when we have some option to find a judge that we might think be particularly attractive to our viewpoint. The judges have gotten pretty smart about that in recent years, and what they do is they have a more random way to assign it. But lawyers have always, when you file a case, if you can sort of direct it to a judge who you think might be predisposed to your position, you try to do that. But there are surprises. I mean, look even at the United States Supreme Court when George Bush, President George Bush appointed him to the Supreme Court, I don't think that he expected some of his decisions. So, you know, we lawyers, as much as we like to think that we know exactly how courts are going to rule, exactly what judges are going to think, we simply don't know. All that we can do is tell the people in Florida and the rest of the nation what the standard is under the Florida Supreme Court case law. It's a 1998 case which stands for the proposition that they must show a substantial irregularity under Florida election law, and then secondly, if they can show that they then show that the substantial irregularity in some way inhibits the court from finding that the will of the people is upheld by the election. Now, one piece of caution, the court does allow for some incompetence and efficiency, so there is a stopgap. So no one knows at this point what the court will do.
Greta, even if a judge said, all right, we're going to go ahead and hear this case, and if the decision came down, whether with a jury or not, that the case, that the people filing the lawsuit were correct, it's hard to imagine that there wouldn't be an appeal, right?
Oh, absolutely. But even more than that is that what happens in the meantime. What a court can do is a court could actually issue an injunction preventing the state of Florida from certifying its election. It's even conceivable that you could go in for a preliminary injunction after a certification process by the state of Florida and get the court to decertify, issue an order decertifying. You know, we simply don't know. But even once you get a final decision out of the Florida trial court, the next question is they're going to go to the next court. And there is some precedent in Florida skipping the intermediary court and go immediately to the Florida Supreme Court. But this takes time. Courts will try to move very quickly. We saw in the Elian Gonzalez case in the federal court system how they tried to move very quickly, but that took 3 months. You know, moving quickly in the court system doesn't mean overnight, because lawyers get to brief things, they get to present evidence, so it can be very lengthy.
On the other hand, there are a couple of deadlines coming up. The electors meet December 18th, and there is supposed to be an inauguration on January the 20th, so there are some deadlines at work. Greta Van Susteren, thanks very much, and we'll see you later. Bernie.
Still to come, other challenges, other states. Why our Bill Schneider says it's not just Florida where Election Day may be days from ending. Next on the CNN special report, Election 2000, a race too close to call.
You say you want to get away from it all. How far do you want to go? Another state? Another country? Or another world? Where you can ride a waterfall down the face of a Mayan temple through shark-filled waters. Where you can dance beneath a dome of golden seashells and dine with all the creatures of the sea. Where your room is suspended in the sky and reality is suspended indefinitely. How far do you really want to go? Do you want to go as far as Atlantis? Atlantis. Once upon our time.
Call 1-800-ATLANTIS or your travel professional now for pre-holiday season travel specials.
Tonight in the Spin Room, Florida, the temporary center of the political universe. Join Bill Press and Tucker Carlson for a look at the election. Tonight, 11 Eastern on CNN.
This bank helps you succeed like no other, with more creative, flexible, responsive solutions. This bank acts fast to help your business compete, prosper, be what it's destined to be. This bank makes the effort to know your industry, challenges, and goals, to zero in on your specific needs. This bank is Comerica, and if you're in business, we're your bank. Comerica, we listen, we understand, we make it work.
Mannheim Steamroller Christmas, America's #1 Christmas show. November 22nd, live on stage at the Palace. Mannheim Steamroller Christmas. All the magic and music of Grammy Award winner Chip Davis and Mannheim Steamroller. Get your tickets Saturday morning at 10 at palacenet.com, the Palace Box Office, Ticketmaster, or charged by phone. Don't miss the tradition of Mannheim Steamroller Christmas.
CNN in Time, the Sunday news magazine, 9 Eastern, only on CNN.
Florida, as it happens, may not have a lock on voter challenges to Tuesday's election. Our senior political analyst Bill Schneider joins us now to explain.
Well, Bernie, Gore campaign chairman Bill Daley said today, quote, technicalities should not determine the outcome. But that's exactly where things are headed. The Gore campaign points to the highly unlikely results in Palm Beach County, Florida, which suggest a high level of voter confusion over the ballot. Florida has already undertaken a recount, as required by law when the results are so close. If the Gore campaign undertakes a legal challenge to the results in Florida, that could open the floodgates to legal challenges by the Bush campaign all over the country. After all, several states went for Al Gore by very narrow margins, like Iowa, which Gore carried by 0.2% of the vote.
In the state of Iowa, the margin is now just several thousand votes between Vice President Gore and Governor Bush.
Or Wisconsin, which Gore also carried by less than 1% of the vote.
State of Wisconsin, the Gore's lead has shrunk to 5,050 votes.
The vote count is still going on in Oregon, where no winner has been declared. But Gore is leading in Oregon by just over 2,000 votes. It wouldn't be hard for the Bush campaign to come up with complaints of ballot confusion or other irregularities in the Gore states.
And there's also a recount going on as we speak in Bernalillo County, New Mexico, Albuquerque, the largest county in the state. 27,000 ballots were not counted on election night.
The sniping could escalate. For instance, Bush won New Hampshire by just 1% of the vote. The Gore campaign might mount a challenge there as well as in Florida. Where and how will it all end? What we are seeing is a dangerous politicization of the vote counting process. Each candidate has to ask himself, how much is winning this election really worth? Is it worth creating a constitutional crisis? Is it worth undermining your ability to unite the country?
Question.
Yep.
What if a judge orders a revote, say, in Palm Beach County?
You know, that would be very strange, Bernie. The revote would be among exactly the same voters who voted in that county on Election Day. But they would know something no voters anywhere knew on Election Day, which is how the rest of the country voted. A president of the United States would be elected by the voters of Palm Beach County. Can you imagine that campaign?
Hard to. Bill Schneider, thank you. And just ahead on this CNN special report, further discussion of Election 2000 with this West Palm Beach panel of voters. We'll hear what they have to say with CNN's Leon Harris after the break.
A time in every man's life.
Welcome to the family, Jack.
When he must choose between doing what he's told.
Don't rock the boat, Jack.
And doing what is right.
If we don't get this company on the net, we're dead.
You're a loose cannon, Jack. You have no idea what you're up against.
In a world where you're only as good as your technology.
We're going with Sun.
They're watching you, Jack. Loose cannon is my middle name.
Critical Decision. A Dot and .com production. As in global banking, it takes precision, passion, and expertise to orchestrate success.
You say you want to take a big vacation this year, as long as it is within reason. What is within reason to you? Is riding a waterfall down the face of a Mayan temple through shark-filled waters within reason? Is dancing beneath a dome of golden seashells within reason? Is uncovering the royal towers of a lost city that has risen from the sea within reason? This year, will you expand your definition of what is within reason to include Atlantis? Atlantis, once upon our time.
Call 1-800-ATLANTIS or your travel professional now for January travel specials.
My personal shopper, the latest online shopping tool, only from LandsEnd.com.
Come on. Come on.
Its roomy interior makes it incredibly comfortable. Its 200 horsepower makes it hard to sit still.
Here we go.
The new Chrysler Sebring LXi sedan.
This is it, people. Let's move. On 3.
And now, it's a Consumer's Digest Best Buy.
UBS Financial Services Group, the partnership for success.
The Canvassing Board of Palm Beach County will conduct a partial manual recount and a complete machine recount of its presidential election votes on Saturday. But that's not enough for some voters who would rather have another election indeed. For a look at the mood there, let's go to West Palm Beach, where CNN's Leon Harris is standing by with a panel of voters. Hello, Leon.
Hi, Judy. Good evening, folks. Yes, I am in West Palm Beach. Just arrived here, and it is my pleasure to be with a rather lively group. They're quiet now. I told you guys not to lock up on me when the cameras came on. But we've been sitting here talking about this election and about the ballots and about all of the issues around this particular election, and we've got quite a potpourri of opinions here. If we can get a shot of the room. Do you guys all mind telling who you voted for? Do you mind? All right, let's see the hands of those who voted for Bush. All right. Gore? Any Naderites? Only one. Did you stick with that? Did you have any qualms about that vote at all?
I'd do it again.
You do it again? Why?
I would. That's my vote. It's my right to vote for the person I think is best.
Even after seeing what happened and how things are all tied up now because there's no
my vote. I want the best person. I don't want to waste my vote on some political tiebreaker.
Mm-hmm.
Nor do I. I voted for Buchanan.
You voted for Buchanan?
Yes.
So you are one of the West Palm Beach County voters who meant to vote for Buchanan?
Yes, absolutely.
Is that right?
That's right.
As a matter of fact, you brought in with you a copy of the ballots. Now, you say that every voter in this district got one of these flyers in the mail?
In the whole county.
Okay, in the county. And you got it when?
I think about 10 days before the election.
Is that about the same for everyone?
A week before the election.
About a week before? Mm-hmm. All right. So did you feel after you got that you had enough information about how to fill that ballot out adequately? You didn't have any questions at all after reading it?
No.
The ballot that was sent in the mail did not look like the actual ballot that was presented.
How about saying that again just to make sure folks can hear?
This ballot that was sent in the mail to all of us did not look like the actual ballot that we stood in front of in the voting booth.
Okay, which one was...
Because, and if you would hold that, please, I'll demonstrate. The Democratic and Reform Party, you see on this page, it is much higher up. The Democratic and Reform Party slots were on the same horizontal line.
And
also, I read my instructions, my voting instructions on how, highlighted them on how to vote. And it says, punch straight down through the hole to the right of the arrow by the candidate. And you will see that half the ballot here, all these candidates, Buchanan and the socialists and whatever, the hole is to the left of the candidate's name.
All right, so did that confuse you?
And I will point out something to you. So you have Al Gore and Joe Lieberman right here. There's a hole here. And then, because this was right on the same line, you have a hole here. So you have two holes that are right next to each other.
We're not going to have time to go through all of it. But just want to ask you, first of all, did that confuse you, though, all of that?
Absolutely.
How about anyone else?
It confused me. I voted wrong. When I raised my hand, I said to you that I voted for Gore. The fact remains that I voted for Buchanan by mistake.
You did by mistake?
Absolutely. I come from this is the first time I voted in Florida. I'm formerly voted in New York my whole life. I ran campaigns. I've been involved with elections, and I was always under the belief that the major parties are number 1 and 2, and that the party of the governor is in the number 1 spot, and the other major party, being the Democrat, would be in number 2 spot. Yeah. So naturally, I voted in number 2 spot. Right. It turns out the number 2 spot belonged to Reform Party, not the Democratic Party. Okay. And I agonized that when I left the ballot booth and walked outside, I talked to other people, and I could not believe that I, a Democrat, would have voted for Buchanan as opposed to Gore.
How many of your friends and family do you think made the same mistake?
Many of my friends. I've spoken with them at clubs. I spoke with them while playing golf. Many of them made the same mistake. There's no question about it.
Anyone else?
Well, Leon, I voted Republican, and I didn't have any confusion to actually vote because Bush was on the first line. But as a Republican, going through the ballot in the booth, I was actually could see that somebody could be confused for Bush and Gore. The difference between Buchanan and Gore because of the lines and the way they didn't actually line up, and it was different than the sample ballot.
All right.
So
now, well, we're going to hang on a second. Hold that thought. Hold that thought. We're going to take a break right now. But since we have now found out what happened to you in the booth and what you all thought about what happened, now after the break, we're going to ask you what you all think should happen from here on out. Don't go away. More in just a moment.
You want to get away from it all. How far do you want to go? Another state? Another country? Or another world? Where you can ride a waterfall down the face of a Mayan temple through shark-filled waters. Where you can dance beneath a dome of golden seashells and dine with all the creatures of the sea. Where your room is suspended in the sky and reality is suspended indefinitely. How far do you really want to go? Do you want to go as far as Atlantis? Atlantis. Once upon our time.
Call 1-800-ATLANTIS or your travel professional now for pre-holiday season travel specials.
My Personal Shopper, the latest online shopping tool, only from LandsEnd.com.
I'm not quite sure how to tell you this.
What is it?
You've only got 40 years left to live. Maybe 45, 50 tops.
To create exceptional performance. Design technology. Kumho.
At BASF, we don't make the floor, we make it tougher. We don't make a lot of the products you buy, we make a lot of the products you buy better. BASF.
I can't take it anymore. I need a break from the fans and the paparazzi. I'm going to Priceline.com and planning the ultimate vacation. Top shelf airline tickets, classy rental cars, swanky hotel room. And then when this gig is over, I'm gone, baby. I'm gone.
Welcome back to downtown West Palm Beach. We are live from the St. Anne School, which has been in downtown West Palm Beach since 1925. Our audience hasn't been here quite that long. They've been here for a while this evening. We've been talking about the election that never ends, it seems, and we're getting some very interesting comments from people. I want to start here because you said that you voted for the Republicans, and apparently George W. Bush did come out with more votes, and still at this point does have more votes. And most Republicans that I've been talking to over the last 36 hours or so are saying, so what about this problem with the ballots? We've got the scoreboard. That's all that matters. You don't agree with that?
No.
Why not?
Because I'm an American citizen first. And, you know, as I said when we were off the break, you know, just as in the impeachment trial, all the Democrats took one side of the issue, while the Republicans took another side of the issue. And last night on TV, the same thing happened with Mr. Wexler and Mr. Foley, and I support Mark Foley and voted for him, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But his position was tough nuts is not the way it should be. And I actually, as a voter who would like to see Bush elected, feel cheated by the election because of this confusion on the ballot.
Well, the lady sitting next to you, I don't think agrees with you on that one.
Actually, I don't. I do think that the bottom line, with where we're at now, it's a bad situation for everybody involved.
Mm-hmm.
I personally didn't want my candidate, Bush, put into office this way. But, and I do believe that all the parties have a right to their vote. But the lesser of the two evils, to open up another vote right now with a tainted sample is not the option. You're going to go to states like Pennsylvania and New Mexico that were so close that are going to say, well, we were confused or we had a struggle, and they're going to request the polls to be reopened. I don't think it's the best way constitutionally to deal with this.
All right, now be honest now. We've been friends for, what, all of 10 minutes
Yes.
now. All right, let's be honest here. Would you feel the same way if your ballot had been one of the ones that had been kicked out?
To be quite honest, Leon, I've sat and been very truthful with myself since this has happened. And whether I would have liked it or not, and being just human beings, I would have had to have had the same outlook that, you know what, this is the way it is, and I would hope, because I'm not them, so I don't know, I would have hoped that I would have had the outlook that what is in the best interest of our country at this point?
At this point, then let me ask you all this question. No matter what happens here, one of these gentlemen are going to end up with what seems like a tainted election or tainted presidency. Do you feel like there may be a problem with the legitimacy of whoever happens to ascend to that office? Do you think there might be a problem with that?
How can any man ascend to the highest office in this country and espouse moral character and ascend to the office under a cloud of controversy and possible corruption? It just doesn't make sense. I think we're the laughing stock of this country. Palm Beach County in the state of Florida is looked upon by people as, what are you people, morons down here? I get calls from New York from many of my friends. What's going on down there?
Wait a minute. You guys are going to get a chance to pick the president.
Well, that's not the idea. Is the president, according to the rules, the proper rules, the ethics involved. We talk. Mr. Bush talks about ethics, ethics, ethics. Where are the ethics here? I don't see. 19,000 people were disenfranchised. That, to me, is a tremendous amount.
All right, since you brought that up, we only have about a minute now. Let me ask you all this.
Simple solution, revote.
Okay, revote. That was my next question. What should happen
By
next?
paper ballot.
By paper ballot?
Yes.
Well, you don't trust computers now?
No, I do not.
No.
That's why I'm so careful when I vote. This system is corruptible.
Let me see the hands who think we should have a revote. That's something of a majority.
I have a question. Why didn't those 19,000 people go up to the people that were working the polls in the thing and say, we've got a problem? 19,000? I doubt it.
They all did. They all did, and I was there and I witnessed it. They went and complained.
I worked at
you
the
didn't get
poll
any
here,
help?
and you couldn't get through to the election office. The lines were obvious.
All right. Well, I'm sorry, but that's going to have to be the last. That's going to have to be the last
That
word.
was it. They said that was it, and the votes could not be changed.
Okay, I raised my hand in the precinct like a child. I'm a teacher, a former teacher of 12 years, and somebody came over to me and I said, oh my goodness, I think I voted for Buchanan by mistake. And we took the ballot out, and I looked at it in the light. It was
gonna
like
have
ridiculous.
To be, I'm sorry, but that's going to have to be the last word. We're up against the clock right now. Thanks very much. As you can see, this is not a simple issue. There's not going to be a simple answer. Back to you, Bertie.
That was simply priceless. Thank you, Leon. And thanks to those voters. Fascinating. What kind of fallout can we expect from this Florida recount? Well, still ahead on the CNN special report. Our Jeff Greenfield cracks open the Constitution and runs down several possibilities. We'll be right back.
They're the
largest creatures on Earth. They've adapted and evolved with strength and determination. The kind of strength that helps the Pacific Life family of companies manage more than $300 billion for its clients. And determination that has guided Pacific Life for 130 years. Size, strength, longevity, offering annuities, insurance, and investments. Use the power of Pacific Life.
My Personal Shopper, the latest online shopping tool, only from LandsEnd.com.
You say you want to get away from it all. How far do you want to go? Another state? Another country? Or another world? Where you can ride a waterfall down the face of a Mayan temple through shark-filled waters. Where you can dance beneath a dome of golden seashells and dine with all the creatures of the sea. Where your room is suspended in the sky and reality is suspended indefinitely. How far do you really want to go? Do you want to go as far as Atlantis? Atlantis. Once upon our time.
Call 1-800-ATLANTIS or your travel professional now for pre-holiday season travel specials.
Looking to save more and spend less this holiday season? With the Chrysler Holiday Sale, you can do just that. Because now you can save over $5,100 when you buy a new 2000 Concorde LX with 0% financing. Or choose a low $259 lease on the award-winning 2001 Sebring LX sedan. So take advantage of the Chrysler Holiday Sale today for savings that let you spend more on a real holiday priority, yourself.
Where do you find inspiration? Sometimes where you least expect it. With technology that takes you beyond old boundaries to something more inspiring. Like these compact ProLine servers, with Pentium 3 processors and a 1.75-inch profile that fits everywhere, you can have your next big idea anywhere. Welcome to the new IT, inspiration technology from Compaq.
Bringing you the world for 20 years. This is CNN.
When I was a child, I watched the Berlin Wall going up. To be there on the day that it started coming down was an unbelievable experience.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime story. The politicians were going to officially declare the border open between the two Germanys. The people didn't wait for that at all. They began walking past the politicians. They began climbing over the walls, hugging each other.
After almost 3 decades of separation, Germans of East and West embraced in a common victory. Some came because they wanted to test whether it was true. Others, embittered by years of repression, came vowing they would never go back. It was really history. This was actually happening right in front of you, and you saw these waves of people and reunions and hugs. Unbelievable drama.
It's great. I just can't believe it.
When they finally saw that the governments could no longer hold them back, there was nothing to restrain them.
The symbol of the Cold War, the Berlin Wall, was under attack Friday night. Berliners from East and West wielded hammers, sticks, whatever they could lay their hands on to chip away at years of separation.
This was the beginning of the end of communism in Europe.
CNN 20 is brought to you by the Citibank Advantage Card. Miles that you take further.
Election 2000 has already made the history books. In the end, it may wind up adding several chapters. CNN senior analyst Jeff Greenfield joins us from New York to examine where we are, where we may be going, and how it could affect the next president of the United States.
Every day this story drags on, we hear more and more voices among politicians on the editorial pages for a swift and statesmanlike resolution to this unresolved presidential election. And at the same time, the arguments among partisans are getting louder and louder. Republicans and Democrats are yelling at each other. The Gore and the Bush campaign teams seem to be getting testier and testier. The problem here is that the longer such language is permitted to fester, the closer we get to a series of potential political and constitutional minefields that stand between where we are now and the next president of the United States. Just a couple of examples. First, let's say that Bush gets the Florida electors and Oregon goes to Gore. That leaves Bush with 271 electors. In reality, none of them, whatever state laws say, must vote for Bush, even if the laws say they do. If only 2 of these electors decide to say abstain because they don't like voting for a popular vote loser, because Bush has offended them in some way, that brings Bush down to 269 electoral votes. There is no majority winner, and it goes into the House of Representatives. Say that doesn't happen. Say that Florida certifies Bush. On January 5th, 2001, when the new Congress meets to count these votes and certify them, with Vice President Gore in the chair, if 1 senator and 1 congressman object to the Florida vote, which is almost certainly going to happen if this contentiousness continues, the 2 houses must adjourn to their respective chambers and vote on the challenge. Now, it's unlikely that a Republican House would reject the Florida vote, but if Maria Cantwell wins in Washington, that's a 50-50 Senate tie that Al Gore breaks, and you could have the new president coming into office with at least 1 House telling that president, we don't think you legitimately won that vote. And that would be a mess in terms of legitimacy. Now, if you assume somehow that this election is thrown into the House through, say, faithless electors, then you have the House deciding who the president is by state votes, 1 state, 1 vote, and there are 27 states with Republican majorities in the Congress. That means they'd probably choose Bush. But the Senate, again, if Maria Cantwell wins, is 50-50 with Al Gore breaking the tie, and they could conceivably choose Joe Lieberman as vice president to serve with Republican George Bush. Do I think any of this is likely to happen? I pray fervently it won't. Certainly if we get to the point where it's in the House of Representatives, I doubt that the Senate would force a Democratic vice president on a Republican president. But these are the kinds of minefields that can throw into question the stability of the American process, that can make us look even weirder in the eyes of the world, that can rattle financial markets. And it's a sort of minefield that lies around the corner that somehow in the next couple of weeks, everyone needs to work to try to prevent, because the longer and more partisan this becomes, the more contentious, the more divisive, the angrier, the more the chance is for this ticking time bomb that's in the Constitution, this whole electoral college structure, the better the chance it is that it will absolutely blow up in our face.
So much to think about. Jeff Greenfield. Well, that's all the time we have for this special report.
But stay with CNN for your chance to weigh in on the election. Bill Press, standing by in the spin room, ready to take your phone calls and email comments. That's next at 11 Eastern.
And you'll find the very latest on the Florida recount, plus election results from every state of the union at our website, CNN.com. For all of us, good night from Washington and from Atlanta.
Closed captioning brought to you by Uniglobe Travel. We stay in touch with your traveling needs to make your business trip or vacation a success. Uniglobe Travel, always in touch.
Join Jeff Greenfield for a town meeting live from Ground Zero, West Palm Beach, for the latest on the Florida vote. Friday, 10 Eastern on CNN.
This bank helps you succeed like no other, with more creative, flexible, responsive solutions. This bank acts fast to help your business compete, prosper, be what it's destined to be. This bank makes the effort to know your industry, challenges, and goals, to zero in on your specific needs. This bank is Comerica, and if you're in business, we're your bank. Comerica, we listen, we understand, we make it work.
Mannheim Steamroller Christmas, America's #1 Christmas show. November 22nd, live on stage at the Palace.
Steamroller Christmas. All the magic and music of Grammy Award winner Chip Davis and Mannheim Steamroller. Get your tickets Saturday morning at 10 at palacenet.com, the Palace Box Office, Ticketmaster, or charged by phone. Don't miss the tradition of Mannheim Steamroller Christmas.
If you're ready to take that first step, if you're ready to shop for that first diamond, see the first family in diamonds. Edmund T. Ahee Jewelers, Grosse Pointe Woods.
This bank helps you succeed like no other with more creative, flexible, responsive solutions. This bank acts fast to help your business compete, prosper, be what it's destined to be. This bank makes the effort to know your industry, challenges, and goals, to zero in on your specific needs. This bank is Comerica, and if you're in business, we're your bank. Comerica, we listen, we understand, we make it work.
I'm the most infamous drug lord, killing Pablo, Sunday, 10 Eastern.
My name is Master Chief Billy Sunday, and I am God.
Tomorrow, Robert De Niro and Cuba Gooding Jr. go beyond the limits.
That's a Russian submarine. He'll be dead before you get to him.
Men of Honor, rated R.
From CNN Washington to our Atlanta newsroom and all over the United States, the Spin Room is open.
It's 11 o'clock on the East Coast, 8 o'clock on the West Coast. Do you know who your next president is? Why not? And will you ever? Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Spin Room. I'm Bill Press. You're not going to believe this, but Tucker Carlson had the audacity to leave town tonight, perhaps thinking it would all be over. Big mistake. He'll be back tomorrow night, but we're in great shape because tonight, sitting in for Tucker, we have the equally young, equally conservative, equally irreverent and outrageous Rich Lowry, who's editor for the National Review. Great to have you here tonight,
Rich. Thanks for having me, Bill. I'm glad I could join you just in time for the constitutional crisis.
I know. I mean, this is like impeachment round 2,
exactly.
Right?
If you ever need spin, it's during a constitutional crisis.
That's what you needed, exactly. And we need your spin. Don't forget, the great thing about this show is you get to sound off. This is our democracy on the line, folks, so we want to hear from you. 3 ways to do it. By phone, okay? You can reach us anytime during the hour. We want to take your calls at 1-800-310-4CNN. You can join our chat room online at CNN.com or send us those emails. Rich and I will be reading your emails throughout the show. The address for emails is spin@cnn.com. Okay, so Rich Lowry, let's say a week ago, you and I were sitting in a bar, and I said to you, 48 hours after this election, there'll be a difference of 229 votes out of 100 million between George Bush and Al Gore, and we still won't know who the next president of the United States is. You would have said to me,
oh, it's absolutely incredible. I mean, this is the kind of thing that pundits make a living scoffing at, this sort of scenario. I mean, it's like a horror movie where it's an election that won't die. Every time there's a stake through its heart, it's up again and right at us. And the amazing thing is, Gore obviously had a surge the last couple days in the election. Yeah. The surge seems to be going right into the recount. When does it end? I think Republicans are asking themselves tonight all over the country.
I think George W. Bush is probably asking that tonight in the country. But what gets me is, why are we surprised? I mean, we are talking about Florida, right? This is Florida. A friend of mine today called me and pointed out to me, I want to show you something here. First of all, he said that there's this one section in the Florida ballot, and it says this: a ballot is a document that must provide maximum clarity and correctness. Now, I'd like to show you and all of our viewers on the screen, here's what the Florida presidential ballot officially looks like. You see? It's... No. Seriously, folks, this is an email that's going around, but it's got the straight line for voting for Bush, and you can follow, if you can, how you vote for any of the others.
Yeah, that's either the Florida ballot or the Hillary health care plan, one or the other, right? But Bill, look, I like old people. I like 8
years ago, it was the Hillary health care plan. This year, it may be the Florida ballot. I don't know.
I like old and confused people as much as anyone. But isn't there sort of a basic civic responsibility if you go into the voting booth and you see something that looks like that to you, shouldn't you ask someone or display some curiosity about whether you're actually voting for the right person?
You see, that's the difference between liberals and conservatives. You guys see these people and you say, what morons. We see them and we say, what victims. We need to help
exactly.
these victims.
Personal responsibility. Bush wants to start the responsibility era bill, and this is a good way to get it off the ground.
Now I want to give you another quick hit about Florida. Again, I say, why are we surprised when we're talking about Florida? A couple of years ago, they cleaned up the voter rolls in the state of Florida. Here's, among other things that they found, Rich. You'll be interested in this, okay? Here's Florida now. They found on the voter rolls for 50,483 felons who were not allowed to vote, 47,000 people who were registered in more than one location, and 17,702 dead people. Rich, I want to know, this is, you know what happened? Chicago moved south, right? How many dead people do you think voted in this election? And for whom?
It sounds positively Missouri-like, doesn't it? You know, the conjunction of dead people in an election. You know, this is embarrassing for conservatives for a couple reasons, Bill. You know, we always talk about local government, and what we're getting a big dose of here in Florida is a microscopic examination of local government, and it's not very pretty. You know, it's as bumbling and as incompetent as the federal government.
Well, there is certainly, it seems to be a little shadow or a little cloud over the Sunshine State today. It has been another day from hell. And who would have imagined, in fact, like a week ago, that anybody but a crazy football fan would have even cared about the state of Florida at this point? But for what's been happening in Florida, for how bad it is, for how big that cloud is over the Sunshine State, let's go to our great partner in Atlanta, our Spin Room's Joey Chen. Joey, so where are we now? Can you tell us?
I think we're lost. Maybe we're on a turnpike somewhere in Florida. Yeah. Hey, Rich, welcome to the Spin Room.
Hi, Joey. How you doing?
Great. Hey, so, you know, Florida has a lot more going for it than just some cutting-edge ballot designers. It is certainly no stranger to the spotlight of national politics. You remember Key Biscayne and Nixon's Florida White House? So, of course, everybody wants to vacation in Florida. But after this week, you political junkies have plenty more reason to set your sights on the Sunshine State. Watch your step, everyone. Florida's boom started in the middle of the last century, turning what once was the South's least populous state into the sun and fun capital of the world. Now it's the center of the political universe. Just think of the tourist slogans they'll come up with now. Florida, where every ballot is an adventure.
I went into a place expecting a simple, fair ballot. I got a crossword puzzle with some configuration no one had ever told me about.
Try this one, Florida, where you may get to vote until you get it right. Or Florida, where the recount keeps going and going and going.
This is democracy in action. If you want simplicity, just go about 70 miles south of Florida and you got Cuba, and they're very simple. They have no elections.
Okay, maybe this one is a stretch. Orange, you glad you voted in Florida? Don't you wish everybody did? How about welcome to Little Brother's Big Doghouse? Here's one. Florida, when it comes to politics, we don't Mickey Mouse around.
The Democrats who are politicizing and distorting these events risk doing so at the expense of our democracy.
How does this grab you? Florida, the state where we politicize politics. Retire here all your political dreams. A very magic kingdom indeed, guys. You know, I have another idea, something like Florida, bringing anarchy to the United States, a leaderless society, and this is great.
I like Orange, you glad you voted.
You like that one? Orange, you glad? What about you, Rich? Think any of those have potential with the Florida Tourism Board?
The best thing about Florida, as far as I'm concerned, is Rush Limbaugh is based there.
In Palm Beach, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
In Palm Beach, there it is.
Maybe it is Buchanan country.
There's the conspiracy. But Joey, I saw today somebody faxed to me an editorial that was in the Havana newspaper about the election in Florida, and the headline was Banana Republic. Now, when the Cubans start making fun of our election process,
Elian went the wrong place. So
that's right. I think we may be in trouble. Thanks, Joey. We'll be back to you in just a little bit. And time to get the, go to Tallahassee, get the report on the ground. And first guest tonight, David Royce is an AP reporter, a longtime reporter there in Tallahassee. He's been out there getting all the numbers, reporting them to all the networks, so we've been keeping up to date. Hey, David, good evening. Welcome to the Spin Room.
Thanks. Good evening.
David, thanks for joining us. Let us first, if we can get from you, just what is the state of the count at the moment?
Well, the last I checked with my desk, we're reporting that we've checked with 66 of the 67 counties, and it looks like Bush is ahead by some 220 some odd votes. I think it was 229 vote spread with all but one of the counties we'd checked with. Our numbers are a little different from the states because, frankly, we're getting them from the counties before they are. The AP is the largest news organization in the... Yeah, I was just going to say, we're huge, so we can check with every county, which is what we're doing.
Explain to us how that works. I mean, it seems extraordinary that the California Secretary of State is uninformed on the question compared to you guys.
Florida Secretary.
Sorry, yeah, Florida.
The Florida Secretary. The supervisors of this is not actually taking place in Tallahassee, even though the world's media is gathered here. This is happening in 67 counties around Florida, where these votes are being recounted by the county canvassing boards, the supervisors of elections, and some other local officials. The AP is a huge news organization, and we've got a lot of people, and that's how it's happening. We've got people checking with every county, at every county supervisor of elections, to see what they are reporting as their recount number. Those are the numbers we're going with.
David, let me ask you this. When did you first start hearing about any problems in the count in Florida? Particularly, when did you start hearing that there might be problems in Palm Beach County?
We didn't start hearing, the days are all running together for me a little bit now. Yeah. I've been working for a couple of straight days, but we didn't start hearing about the problems in Palm Beach until the middle of the day yesterday. Early on, it was clear that the vote was so close in Florida that there was going to have to be a recount, just because of what state law says about when you have to recount, which is when there's less than 0.5% of a difference.
David, can you give us any idea, is it at all possible that there are actually enough Buchanan supporters there in Palm Beach to have given those number of votes to Pat?
I don't know enough about Palm Beach County's voters to tell you whether there are that many Buchanan supporters. For what it's worth, I know that in our story today, Mr. Buchanan says he doesn't think so. I don't know.
Okay. David Royce, thanks so much for joining us from Tallahassee. Thanks for your good work down there. We've got a couple of members of Congress from Florida coming up here in the Spin Room. But first, Rich, our first telephone call for the evening comes from where else? Palm Beach, Florida. This is Sade. Hey, Sade, good evening. Welcome to the Spin Room.
How are you tonight?
I'm doing great. So what's really happening down there? Did you vote? What was your experience?
Yes, I voted. I'm 30 years old. I voted Republican. I didn't really have any problem with the ballot at all. The ballot itself had a number on it that corresponded to the number on the candidate that the ballot you were following to vote on. When I was done voting, I pulled my ballot out and checked my homework before I turned it into teacher. At no time in my life have I ever been able to go back and correct my homework or gotten problems corrected on a test that I turned in. It's just simply not right.
Okay, all right, Sade, thank you. There's one person who certainly didn't
Well, you know what this suggests to me? Perhaps it's only old Gore voters that were confused, Bill. So I think you have a lot of explaining to do on that score. See, the young Bush guys want their Social Security accounts are on the ball.
That may be the case. All right, now, to the Florida congressional delegation, one on each side. Join us right now. First of all, Democrat Congressman Robert Wexler, who represents the Palm Beach area, of course, is a Gore supporter. And joining us from Tallahassee, he actually represents the Pensacola area of Florida. He's in Tallahassee tonight. Republican Congressman Joe Scarborough, who, of course, is a big George Bush supporter. Congressman Scarborough...
Bill, can I address that last comment? Because it's very interesting what that gentleman said. If you are, in fact, my name's Bush. If you are, in fact, a Bush voter...
Well,
Please, if you are in fact a Bush voter...
Whoa, stop, guys. Listen, this is not Crossfire. This is the Spin Room, so just calm down.
Yes.
We'd just like to have one at a time. We'll give you plenty of time to talk. Robert Wexler, you want to go first? Please go ahead, and then Joe.
Yes. I just wanted to address what the gentleman said, because it's a very valid point. If you are a Bush voter, it is highly unlikely you would have any confusion, because George Bush was first on the ballot, and his punch number was first. The confusion with respect to Al Gore was that he was, in fact, even though he was second on the ballot, his punch number was third, and Pat Buchanan was second. So while you would think, if you were an Al Gore supporter, that your punch number, which is in fact the ballot, would be second right after George Bush, but it wasn't. It was third.
Congressman, we're going to throw up the ballot here. And granted, some people may have found it confusing. I think it's pretty clear because you know where the arrows are going. The numbers correspond on the punch holes to the candidate. So let me ask you this.
No, they don't.
Let me ask you this, Congressman, please. Let me ask you this. You go into the voting booth.
Sure.
You see this ballot. You are confused. Don't you have a responsibility to ask someone and make sure that you are voting for the right person? This is important business. You're electing the next president of the United States. What would you do if you were confused by the ballot?
It is very important business, and you must understand that when you put the ballot in to the form in which it fits, if you do not have a perfect fit, if you look at the word Democratic, for instance, it corresponds exactly to Pat Buchanan's punch number. You would think in an important thing like the... Excuse me? You would think you could rely upon the law, and that is, the law says in Florida, Al Gore should be second on the ballot and the second punch number. He was not. Yes, you can ask questions, but what also is the practice I know in Palm Beach County, you only have 5 minutes to vote.
Gotta go. Congressman Joe Scarborough, I want to make a promise to you. We've heard one side of this Palm Beach question. I know there's another side. I know you want to talk about it. And you are up first after we come back from a break, and you get the word as to you are finished with it. But right now, there is other news happening in the world tonight. Today, and we're going to check in with our Joey Chen in Atlanta to tell us what's been going on. Joey, what's the hard news of the day?
All right, Bill, this is the stuff you might have missed today while you were watching the bottom third of your TV screen, which pretty much everybody's staring at this point. Some of the suspects in the Cole attack are now talking about the plans for blowing up that Navy ship. Investigators in Yemen have gotten this much out of them: a fourth house where they found more clues. Evidence the plan took several months to hatch, and assurance that Yemen was not in on it. The ship itself is on its ocean-going tow truck now. It's stopping home in Norfolk, Virginia, so they can take the cruise missiles off, and it's going on to Pascagoula, Mississippi, so they can fix the huge hole in its hull and all the damage that went on inside. Now, this will take about a year and cost at least $150 million, but it is a billion-dollar ship. It's probably worth it there. There's reason to wonder about how smart terrorists are. It turns out there was another identical attack planned against a Navy warship docked in Yemen over New Year's. Our guy at the Pentagon learned this from his sources. But the terrorists put too many explosives on their attack boat. And before it could do any damage, it sank. All right, we'll take a break, come back and spin some more. Watch this.
Can't take it anymore. I need a break from the fans and the paparazzi. I'm going to Priceline.com and planning the ultimate vacation. Top shelf airline tickets, classy rental car, swanky hotel room. And then when this gig is over, I'm gone, baby. I'm gone.
the largest creatures on Earth. They've adapted and evolved with strength and determination, the kind of strength that helps the Pacific Life family of companies manage more than $300 billion for its clients, and determination that has guided Pacific Life for 130 years. Size, strength, longevity, offering annuities, insurance, and investments. Use the power of Pacific Life.
The perfect vehicle for whatever circle you travel in. Even if it's the Arctic Circle.
Hur var trafiken?
Det vanliga. The new Volvo Cross Country. Adventures in luxury.
I will no longer be a silent witness to my own kids' education.
I will no longer sit and watch the system fail my kids.
I will no longer let them use my tax dollars.
My tax dollars to tell me where to send my kids to school.
I will no longer let them put the system's
needs above my kids' needs.
I will no longer let freedom and choice be the American way in everything.
Except their education. I want to have choices.
I want to have a voice.
I want to decide where to send my kids to school.
Uncertainty continues. Welcome back to the Spin Room. I'm Bill Press. Rich Lowry is here tonight, filling in for Tucker Carlson. We want to hear from you by phone, 1-800-310-4CNN. Our chat room, join it at CNN.com, and you can email us. We've had 7,500 emails so far in just 15 minutes. Send them in to spin@cnn.com. Speaking of emails, our congressman waiting to join us very briefly here. Email from Bill, Rich. He says, revote in Palm Beach only. Yeah, that's smart. Let the people that can't figure out a ballot decide who's the next president.
I think that's an excellent point. One of these confused voters was on TV the other day saying he thought he voted for the wrong person, but he didn't ask anyone after he left the voting booth because he was too embarrassed. Well, if you're too embarrassed, my opinion is tough luck. But let me throw one at you here, Bill. This is Frank from Victoria, British Columbia. Surely the recount of Florida, which has been trending back towards Gore, leads one to the reasonable conclusion that systematic manipulation in favor of Jeb Bush's brother has occurred. As an interested viewer from Canada, I have been marveling at the U.S. election process for months. That is in question now. Now, as an American patriot, Bill, this hurts that Canadians are laughing and mocking our great electoral process
those two Bush brothers. What are they up to? Okay, now let's go back to our Congressman Joe Scarborough. Joe, you've just heard your colleague Robert Wexler talk about the situation in Palm Beach. 19,000 ballots, he says, are lost. You don't think, Congressman, that that's any problem at all? No?
You know, first of all, let me say, and I was about to say this before, this show started out with you trying to ask me a question. You can tell who's supporting Al Gore here because, like Al Gore, it was like an SNL skit. He interrupted you with the question and then held the floor for 5 minutes. But let me tell you, we do need to look at the Palm Beach deal. We need to get the recounts. We need to have all the challenges done. That's fine. But everybody needs to stay calm and be grown-ups about this. I was on a show a couple hours ago where a guy that I've known for 6 years and I've never had any problems with called me a liar 5 times in like a 30-second span. Everybody needs to calm down. I do want to say, though, you've got to look at sort of the MO right now that's going on, and you've got to tip your hands to the Democrats. They've been very aggressive and played political hardball. They started out with a story yesterday morning, which was, oh my gosh, the Republicans have stolen the election because African Americans in Miami weren't able to vote in a certain precinct because the box was stolen and put here or there. They found crayons in there. And then after that story was shot down after 6 hours, the next story was Pat Buchanan could never get 3,000 votes in Palm Beach County. Then we find out that Pat Buchanan got over 8,000 votes 4 years ago. So now the news story is 19,000 votes have been stolen. This has never happened before. Certainly never happened in Cook County or Philadelphia, did it? 19,000 votes discounted. Then we find out in Palm Beach County just 4 years ago, 15,000 votes. 15,000 votes. were also thrown out. It's the same exact thing, and the turnout was lower back then. So we're all in the same sort of category. But I'll tell you what, this 19,000 vote controversy will be dismissed. It's not going to have an effect. I will guarantee you tomorrow morning they will come up with a new story. They're great at this. They have a new story every day.
Okay, all right, hold on just a second. Go ahead.
Let's get Rich. Congressman Wexler in here again. Congressman Wexler, I know you're a great advocate of no voters having any sort of upset or everything being made very easy and simple for them. So do you think that there should be a revote in those areas in the Panhandle where the election had already been called by the networks in Florida, so that may have discouraged some voters from turning out and voting for Bush in that area?
For me, this is not about Bush or Gore. Every voter in Florida, every voter in America must have the opportunity to cast his or her ballot in a proper way and have it counted appropriately. This is not about Democrat or Republican, but let me address Mr. Scarborough's numbers. Joe respectfully is repeating the numbers that the Bush campaign stated earlier in the day with respect to the number of votes in Palm Beach County that were discarded. Those numbers are false. The number of 14,000 votes as being discarded because people voted for two candidates in 1996 in Palm Beach County is wrong. The actual number is about half that number. So let's not confuse the numbers. The Bush campaign needs to use the appropriate numbers, and the numbers here speak for themselves. And please, let's not start making fun of voters. 19,000 people voted for two people for president. This is not one person or a silly group of people.
All right, time for a break, Congressman. Stay tuned there. We'll be right back to you. And when we come back also, you know, you talk about confusing forms. Nobody could show the confusion better than Jeannie Moe. She's got a great little story for us when we come back on The Spin Room, and more of your emails and phone calls coming up. Rich Lowry and Bill Press in The Spin Room.
Closed captioning provided by USSearch.com. Know who you're hiring with pre-employment screening from USSearch.com. Visit us on the web or call 1-800-US-SEARCH.
Join Jeff Greenfield for a town meeting live from Ground Zero, West Palm Beach, for the latest on the Florida vote. Friday, 10 Eastern on CNN.
Diving beneath the polar ice cap takes endurance, strength, and perfect timing. Qualities you'll find in leading Arctic filmmaker Adam Ravitch. Qualities you'll find in his timepiece, the rugged Rolex Submariner.
Available at Edmund T. Ahee Jewelers on Mack Avenue in Grosse Pointe Woods.
Get a CD player. Get a power sunroof, and a whole lot more. Introducing the newly restyled 2000 Sunfire Sun and Sound Coupe. A hotter set of wheels, money left to burn.
GM employees and family members take advantage of this great offer at the #1 Pontiac GMC dealer in the country, Jim Cosley.
Who brought down the most infamous drug lord, Killing Pablo, Sunday, 10 Eastern.
I'm Rich Lowry, sitting in for Tucker Carlson. Welcome back to the Spin Room. I'm here with Bill Press.
Bill Press, yes, indeed, Rich. You know, we're coming up in the next segment. We're going to start talking about Spin of the Day. And at the end of the show, the Spin of the Day, most important part of the show, you've got your Spin of the Day, I've got mine. We want to hear yours. Don't forget.
It's so equitable. We both get a Spin of the Day.
No, I know. It's that one moment today, the one thing you heard today that just drove you crazy when you wanted to throw something at the screen. You know what we mean. Spin of the Day. Right now, our Congressman Joe Scarborough, Congressman Robert Wexler, both from Florida. Gentlemen, we just have a little bit of time left. I think the question we want to ask both of you is, and let me start with you, Congressman Scarborough, when should both sides just simply say, stop, enough, we've got to accept this result and move on? When do you move on?
And without any spin, I really think this is the case, regardless of which way it goes. We're going to be, and we're really in a three-step process. The first step process right now is going to finish up probably in 20 or 30 minutes when they finish counting the votes for the last county, which I think is Seminole County. Should be coming in soon. Okay. Now, there are going to be some challenges. The second step is going to be some hand counting of the ballots. After that step is through, the third step is going to be counting the military overseas absentee ballots. At that point, if one of the two sides don't concede the election, then what's going to happen is you're going to start seeing places like Wisconsin, Iowa, New Mexico, California ripping open their ballot boxes. We're going to go through this process, and there's going to literally be a political civil war in this country. Whoever is ahead 10 days from now, 7 days from now, the other side needs to concede, and we need to move on and get that person in the White House, be it a Republican or a Democrat.
Congressman Wexler, let's throw that to you. When do you give up and stop and concede this thing, if ever?
The most important issue is that all the votes get counted, and they get counted appropriately. Joe Scarborough is correct. It will take at least another week for the overseas ballots to come back, and we certainly can't call an election where the two candidates are roughly 200 votes apart out of 100 million until all the votes come in. But I have to address one other issue. The suggestion has been made that some people have concocted the Palm Beach County problem after the ballots were closed. No. The Palm Beach County supervisor on election day, late in the day, sent out a memorandum, the smoking memorandum, that urged all voters in Palm Beach County not to vote for two presidential candidates. This was brought to her attention by me and many others on the day of the election before the ballots were even counted.
All right, Congressman Robert Wexler, Congressman Joe Scarborough, you're always good to come on to CNN when we call you. Thanks again. Thanks here again tonight for being in the spin room.
Thanks a lot,
good to hear you agree on that point. And now, Rich, we've talked about confusion, about confusing ballots, about confusing forms. Some of us always have to, we go somewhere, we have to fill out. Jeannie Most has been looking into confusion and how confusing forms can be and ballots can really be. Here's Jeannie Most to tell us all about it.
Have you ever been momentarily stumped by an ATM machine as you try to match up the right button to the right option?
Sometimes there's a button here and there'll be two other options next to it and you're kind of like, okay, where's the line pointing?
That gives you some idea what punching holes in a Palm Beach County ballot is like. This is the Palm Beach ballot that's caused all the confusion.
Oh,
wow. New Yorkers were eager to examine the much ballyhooed ballot.
My mom, for instance, would probably screw that up.
The problem is some folks say they're worried they mistakenly punched the number 4 hole for Pat Buchanan when they really meant to punch the number 5 hole for Al Gore. Every New Yorker we talked to agreed the ballot looks confusing.
Gee, that's hard to find.
That's tricky. I've seen this before, so I know it's there, but this line makes you want to go there.
But when we asked them to pick the correct hole to vote for Al Gore...
That one? I would punch this one.
You'll punch 5.
Practically everyone got it right.
I would pick this one.
Correct.
But if I was a little bit elderly, I could see that this is just a bit too close.
But even older folks we asked...
Looks like it's, with my eyesight's poor, but...
Managed to pick the right circle. Now, which hole would you choose?
This one.
There you go.
It's very easy to make a mistake with this.
Well, everyone says that, but no one's made the mistake. Well, almost no one.
I think I would say it says Democrat. I would vote for Al Gore right there.
In the Pat Buchanan hole? So while some Floridians are protesting, chanting, Gore got more, and demanding a revote, this New Yorker had her own solution. What do you think they ought to do down there to fix the mess?
They should get out of the sun.
They should get out of the sun?
Yeah. I think they have a sunstroke down there.
Jeannie Most, CNN, New York.
There's the answer. They ought to get out of the sun.
Well, it's very interesting. When they're in New York, they can make the ballot out, but then when they move to Florida and retire, they can't.
No, I was wondering about that. We should have held this election in New York City. They should have been voted right before they retired and moved to Florida.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, they clearly need a Reader's Digest large print ballot down there in Florida. That would probably solve a lot of the problems.
It must be the sun. It's got to be the sun. That's got to be the difference. All right, we've talked about the politics and about the confusion. How about all the legal aspects of this? We'll get into that when we come back with a real expert on election law, Carol Lahan. She'll be joining us in the spin room, joining me, Bill Press, and Rich Lowry, and all of you. We'll be coming right back.
You say you want to take a big vacation this year, as long as it is within reason. What is within reason to you? Is riding a waterfall down the face of a Mayan temple through shark-filled waters within reason? Is dancing beneath a dome of golden seashells within reason? Is uncovering the royal towers of a lost city that has risen from the sea within reason? This year, will you expand your definition of what is within reason to include Atlantis? Atlantis, once upon our time.
Call 1-800-ATLANTIS or your travel professional now for January travel specials.
Individually, they are standouts in their respect. This is a national sales alert from Dodge. Effective immediately for 5 full years. Get 0 APR on 2000 Dodge Stratus and Intrepid, 0.9 APR on 2000 Dodge Dakota and Durango, and 4.9 APR on select all-new 2001 Dodge Caravans. See your Dodge dealer immediately, as 60-month financing can save you over $5,600.
See the friendly Dodge dealer near you.
My name is Master Chief Billy Sunday, and I am God.
A man who won't give up and a man who won't back down are about to test the depths of courage. Tomorrow, Robert De Niro, Cuba Gooding Jr., Men of Honor, rated R.
Just a bit of magic. Oh, you gotta see it. Slightly unexpected, perfectly perfected. Ahead of your head, I said. Our stuff is what dreams are made of. Time to bring it on home.
High-definition television, made possible by Panasonic, just slightly ahead of our time.
Oh, just a bit of magic.
Okay.
Welcome back to Spin Room. I'm Rich Lowry, sitting in for Tucker Carlson, here with Bill Press, spinning away. But we want to hear your spin, too. Call us, 1-800-310-4CNN. Chat with us, CNN.com. Email us your Spin of the Day nominations. That's spin@CNN.com.
Yes, get those Spin of the Day nominations in here. Here's an email from Michael from Atlanta. I am a fierce Democrat, but I only want Gore to be elected. If he gets the electoral vote in Florida without going to court, it will hurt my party in the long run. Interesting about when to stop.
High principle there, Bill.
There it is, and from a Democrat.
I got one from Pete Lopez. If George W. wins without a revote in Palm Beach, he's going to know how O.J. Simpson feels enjoying a result he never deserved. Maybe he'll take up golf too.
I think it's cruel to compare George W. to O.J.
It is cruel.
Telephone calls coming in too. Here is Marnell calling us from Illinois. Hello, Marnell. Good evening. Welcome to the Spin Room.
Hi. Thank you. I just want to know if we the people vote for a president for their honesty and fairness to represent the people. If Bush wins under these circumstances, being this close, knowing about all the votes thrown out, how could we respect a person like that to lead us? Plus, knowing about all the popular vote.
Good. Okay, Marnell, good question. I think either one of these guys is going to have a tough time, whoever gets there, with this slim vote.
It's tough. It could be a tainted victory either way, and
indeed.
That's why it's
Got
not
call?
very good for the country. Yeah, we have Ken from North Dakota on the line. Ken, what do you have to tell us?
Well, basically, I'm sitting up here in the middle of the winter country, and it sounds like whether it's Democrat or Republican, whether you're a politician or a private citizen, that everybody out there is acting like children. They say they got messed up on the voting. Well, you you went to school as a child and you learned how to read and write and follow lines. How come you couldn't basically follow the line?
All right, Ken, I hear you. We'll have to send Ken down to Palm Beach to ask those 19,000 people that question.
Education reform bill.
Education reform.
Where's accountability?
No, that's right. And we're going to get to our legal expert in just a second, but again, we've got to keep our eye on what's really happening out there. In addition to this great uncertainty across the United States, let's check in again with Joey Chen in Atlanta for another look at the news of the day. Hi, Joey.
Hey, Bill, you know, it's going to be like the movie Groundhog Day in your morning paper. The front page is still going to be about Florida. But back there on page 2 or 3, you may see that Yasser Arafat was back at the White House today. President Clinton still thinks he can talk the Mideast players into peace, or at least into not fighting. Well, Arafat's looking for a UN force to protect Palestinians. So you can figure that he's going to use today's Israeli missile strike to make his point when he talks to the Security Council. Smoke marks the spot where the strike hit. It killed one of Arafat's commanders and 2 women bystanders. Israel says the commander was a terrorist mastermind, and it's bracing itself for Palestinians to hit back. Let's look at some of the news you're going to see in the paper tomorrow morning. Hey, Bill.
Okay, thanks, Joey. Thanks very much. And coming back to you for a special segment in just a minute. I can't wait. Now, as we've told you, to look at the legal side of all these questions about Florida, we're joined now by Carol Laham. Carol's an election law attorney specialist with the office here in Washington of Wiley, Ryan, and Fielding. Good evening, Carol. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, how are you?
Good to have you here.
Carol, thanks for joining us. Now, let me ask you this, Carol. When does a ballot stop just being confusing and become illegal and grounds for overturning an election?
Well, that's a very fine question, and I'm not sure we know the answer to that question. What has to happen is that there has to be a substantial irregularity in the voting in that district in Florida for the court to overturn the election, or maybe to possibly call a new election in that district.
Carol, let me ask you this first of all. Who has standing to challenge an election in Florida? I mean, can anybody from any state just go in there and say this was rigged, this wasn't right?
No, what Florida law allows for is for a voter in the state of Florida to go in and challenge the election, contest the election, saying that there was something about the ballot or about the election that was unfair or confusing. It's unclear exactly what their challenge is going to be, but they can state a cause of action to the court.
Now, we saw earlier, Rich showed the ballot, we've seen that over and over again on the screen a little earlier, but I want to show you just quickly a couple of sections of Florida election law and coming back and ask you about the ballot. The first thing says, it does say in the Florida election law that to vote for a candidate you vote for a candidate whose name is printed on the ballot, you place a cross mark in the blank space at the right of the name, and then it also says that the names of the candidates of the party which received the second highest vote for governor shall be second under the heading for each office. Now, on this ballot, as we've seen, the mark for Pat Buchanan was to the left, not to the right, and Pat Buchanan was second, not Al Gore. So on the face of it, in your opinion, was that ballot in Palm Beach County even a legal ballot?
Well, I don't think we know the answer to that. I think that...
That's why I'm asking you.
I think, though, that what the law says is for a written ballot, it has to be to the right of the candidate. And the ballots that we're talking about are not written ballots. So I think that's going to be one of the issues in the court that they're going to look at. And for other ballots, for ballots that are on a voting machine or electronic ballots, it says that you need to be as close as possible to that written ballot, but it does not have to be identical to the written ballot.
Carol, it seems to me that election challenges and recounts, they're a little bit like baseball games being played under protest. You know, there's a lot of sound and fury, but ultimately nothing changes, and the person who won always ends up winning. Is that true? Can you think of any example of a case you've been involved with where a result has been overturned for similar reasons?
It's very rare for a case to be overturned for especially the reasons that we're talking about in Florida, which is voter confusion. I'm not aware of any single case that's been overturned for that reason. There have been cases that have been overturned for fraud reasons, and that's an entirely different allegation than what's going on here today.
Okay, Carol, lots more questions for you, but we got lots more time coming up. We'll be back in the spin room. Don't forget, get those nominations in for Spin of the Day coming up at the end of the hour. We'll be back for a lot more questions. And also, we're going to have News of the Weird tonight for the first time.
Whoa. Weirder than this, Bill?
Weirder than this. We'll be right back.
They're the largest creatures on Earth. They've adapted and evolved with strength and determination. The kind of strength that helps the Pacific Life family of companies manage more than $300 billion for its clients. And determination that has guided Pacific Life for 130 years. Size, strength, longevity, offering annuities, insurance and investments. Use the power of Pacific Life.
You say you want to get away from it all. How far do you want to go? Another state? Another country? Or another world? Where you can ride a waterfall down the face of a Mayan temple through shark-filled waters. Where you can dance beneath a dome of golden seashells and dine with all the creatures of the sea. Where your room is suspended in the sky and reality is suspended indefinitely. How far do you really want to go? Do you want to go as far as Atlantis? Atlantis. Once upon our time.
Call 1-800-ATLANTIS or your travel professional now for pre-holiday season travel specials.
No two eyes see the same world. No two businesses are identical. And now, one company creates internet solutions unique to you. Fujitsu. The possibilities are infinite.
Welcome back to Spin Room. I'm Rich Lowry, sitting here with Bill Press.
And Rich, this story, talk about stories that will not go away. Okay, we just heard that the relatives of Elian Gonzalez from Miami have now officially complained, or at least they're moaning, that the new attorney representing Al Gore in this case about this for the recount is the same attorney who represented them. They say they've been betrayed by this guy.
But I bet the Gonzalez family got their votes right.
I don't know whether they did. All right, Carol Ham is with us. She is an election law expert joining us here in Washington. Carol, we want to ask you about the Electoral College, but first, about what remedies might be possible in Palm Beach County. Is it possible that the judge in Palm Beach County could order an entire new election for that county? And in that case, would only those who voted last Tuesday be able to vote in the next one?
I think it is possible for the judge to do that, although it would be highly unlikely, quite frankly. And then the question becomes, who does he allow to vote? Does he only allow those people that voted the first time to come and vote, or does he allow anybody in the county that's registered to come and vote? And then furthermore, there's a question about, will people change their votes when they come and do that?
Sure. I'm sure no one would. No one would
never.
change it. Carol, let me ask you this. The story gets more and more confusing. I suspect if the Gore campaign doesn't succeed in this legal challenge, they may go to electors and try to sway them and get them to change. I know this is shocking. I know this is shocking to you, Bill. But just hypothetically, we'll imagine this scenario. Right. Carol, what is the law there? What are the rules? Can any elector, at the end of the day, vote any way he or her pleases?
Well, this is another question of state law, and apparently there are at least 25 states that allow electors to change their votes without any ramifications at all. So if I were the Gore campaign, I'd go to those 25 states and those electors in those states and try to convince them first.
But, you know, even in those states, my understanding is where elector says, the law says you have to vote the way, you have to be a party hack. You have to vote the way your party tells you. Mm-hmm. You would only pay a fine. They're not going to shoot you at sunrise, right?
Right, exactly.
Bush needs the party hacks to come through for him,
that's
obviously.
Right.
Gore may need the Gore may need the party hacks to come through for him. And if quick question, quick answer. If there is another election in Palm Beach County, there's nothing preventing the candidates from campaigning again, all over again, in Palm Beach County while they're waiting for that election, correct?
No, nothing preventing that at all.
Oh my God!
Well, we're gonna have Al Gore rallies in Palm Beach at 3 a.m. again, 30 hours straight, campaigning just in Palm Beach.
Those two candidates, George Bush and Al Gore, are going to take every one of the voters in Palm Beach County out to dinner before the next election. All right, Carol Lamb, thanks so much for joining us, Carol. Rich, we start new things on the show all the time. So the great things about Spin Room, Spin of the Day pops up. You know, we have all this new stuff. Tonight we have a new feature. It's called News of the Weird. I think we borrowed it from Mad Magazine or something like that. But Joey Jed is the brave one who's going to launch this new feature for us, our partner in Atlanta.
I'm out on a limb here.
Joey,
I'm out on a limb. Okay.
Be as weird as you can be.
Well,
let's go.
I've been as weird as I can be for most of this program. But anyway, we've been looking at our sources, trying to find news that isn't ready for prime time, but is worth a spin. So here goes. CNN has learned, have I said that authoritatively enough, that Al Gore voted for George W. Bush. Yeah, really. Of course, this Al Gore would be the one who's a 72-year-old shoe salesman in Yakima, Washington. Mr. Gore says the only Democrat he's ever voted for in a presidential election was Harry Truman. That would be in '48. We know what Democrats are thinking, but no, what you're about to see here is not the Florida recount. It is the Smashing Pumpkins Day at the National Zoo in Washington. Okay, make a liar out of me. We don't have the pictures of it. All right, well, it's the Elephant Annual Pumpkin Stop, and it's part of a recycling program used for the Halloween programs, pumpkins up there. All right, let's go back to the subject of the election then. Here's an excuse we haven't heard from the folks in Florida. This is it. We didn't get out ballots to the county clerk's office because a 300 to 400-pound bear was camped outside our door. Well, that's the excuse from Redmond Township, Michigan. At least the officials inside the township hall used their time well. They counted the ballots while they were waiting. The bear never did leave the door. They finally called the police, who, as you know, carry guns. You don't need to ask what happened. We could say that the bear was disenfranchised. Sorry to say, but this is supposed to be a happy program, so we want to talk
we need to get Congressman Wexler on that case. I think clearly it's
the bear wanted his vote to count.
Yeah.
We'll find out who planted the bear at the doorstep. But I want to admit something. I've actually been to the pumpkin stop at the Washington National Zoo.
What, were you trying to recycle or what?
No, they throw all these pumpkins in the elephant cage there, and the elephants go around and chomp, they stomp them down, and then they actually sort of, eat them as well as they can with their trunks. It's kind of fun to watch.
Do they seem to really enjoy it? They're having a good time?
I think they were having as much fun as the voters were in Palm Beach County. Joey, thanks very much. Okay, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, what you've been waiting for, the spin of the day. We've already got some of your nominations here. We'll be reading those. Plus, Rich Lowry's spin of the day and my spin of the day coming up in the Spin Room here on CNN.
Property damage, workers' comp, perishable stock coverage. The Hartford can tailor your insurance to be as unique as your small business. The Hartford, bring it on.
You say you want to take a big vacation this year, as long as it is within reason. What is within reason to you? Is riding a waterfall down the face of a Mayan temple through shark-filled waters within reason? Is dancing beneath a dome of golden seashells within reason? Is uncovering the royal towers of a lost city that has risen from the sea within reason? This year, will you expand your definition of what is within reason to include Atlantis? Atlantis, once upon our time.
Call 1-800-ATLANTIS or your travel professional now for January travel specials.
Can we still drive our cars and have cleaner air? We think so. Today, BP is improving air quality in 50 major cities around the world and across the U.S. by introducing cleaner burning gasoline and diesel fuels. It's not an end to the problem, but the solution has to start somewhere. BP.
Okay, welcome back to the Spin Room. I'm Bill Press here with Rich Lowry tonight. He's sitting in for Tucker Carlson. Tucker will be back tomorrow night. It's time for the spin of the day. Our first one is a telephone call. Rich.
Thanks, Bill. We have Shauna from Ohio who has a spin of the day for us. Shauna?
Hi, Shauna.
Hello?
Hello? Hi, Shauna. You're on. What's your spin of the day?
Yes, I think we should have a real pick a day at random, either by lottery or otherwise, and have a do it all over again as a nation. And because no candidate is going to be able to assume the office with any kind of respect from the rest of the country under these circumstances. I'm also very disappointed in the media, in all the wisecracks against the elderly.
All right, Shauna, thank you so much for the call. That's just what we need, another national election. Here's from Jonathan from Memphis, Tennessee. My spin of the day nomination's actually what may be the spin of the race. I think Bush should have reconsidered his plea to Gore supporters at the end of the final debate when he asked them to vote only once.
That's a very good point. Here's my favorite email spin of the day. Scott from Arkansas. Here's the spin of the day I'm sick of. Since when did the term disenfranchised come to mean my guy didn't win?
Whenever your guy didn't win.
Exactly.
It becomes, whenever your guy didn't win, it's disenfranchised. All right, your spin of the day. As a guest, I'm going to let you take the first.
Thanks, Bill. It's very gracious. My favorite spin of the day, I went to the most reliable source for egregious spin, who is Jesse Jackson. Jesse Jackson has Selma on the brain. This is what he said earlier today.
In many ways, Tuesday fulfilled the promise of Selma, Alabama. That's right. It also fulfilled the promise of the sacrifice, blood of blacks and Jews across the century.
Well, you know,
it is over the top.
Let's get this straight. You know, Decatur, Illinois, kids are suspended from school. Selma, Alabama. Houston, Texas, challenge to affirmative action. Selma, Alabama. Someone needs to tell this guy it's not 1965 anymore.
I think it is over the top. I got to ask you, I've got time for my spin here, right? Yes, indeed. Okay, this is mine. This is my nominee for the spinner of the race is Karen Hughes, Bush's communications director, and here she is today explaining what this is all about.
That I do think that people who raised the issue of the popular vote, it is interesting to look at it in context and realize that Governor Bush earned more popular votes than President Clinton did during both of his two previous elections. Tom?
Now, I just want to point out, so George Bush got more votes than Bill Clinton did in 92 or 96. Okay, number one. So did Al Gore. Number two, it doesn't mean anything. The question is, did he win or not? He lost the popular vote. Why do people who are so smart get up and say things that are so dumb?
I can't believe you're being so dismissive here. You know, Bush probably got more votes than Lincoln, more votes than FDR. This has to count for something, doesn't it? What does it take to please you? What does it take?
I repeat my question. Why do people that you and I know are so smart say things so dumb?
You know
I guess you know why? Does it come with a job?
It's what they're paid for, exactly.
It's what they're paid to do.
Capitalism at work, Bill.
But you know what they're paid to do? They're paid to spin.
Sure, that's why they spin. That's the way the free market works. Pay someone to spin, they spin.
That's what makes it work. Rich Lowry, thanks for joining us tonight.
Bill.
All right,
my pleasure.
Great to have you here. We're out of the spin room for tonight. Tucker Carlson will be back tomorrow night. Same time, 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Pacific. And look for us this weekend. Also, Saturday and Sunday, the spin room's going to be open. So for Rich Lowry, our guest spinner tonight, for Joey Chen in Atlanta, for me, Bill Press. Good night, everybody. Spin away. Have a good night.
brought down the most infamous lord of the drug trade, Kevin Pablo, on CNN Perspectives. Sunday, 10 Eastern, only on CNN.
Nothing challenges horse and rider as completely as does eventing. Day 1, dressage is all about precision. Day 2, cross country is a test of endurance and speed. Day 3, show jumping demands strength and timing. Those skills make the Rolex Kentucky 3-day event one of the most stirring equestrian competitions in the world.
Available at Edmund T. Ahee Jewelers on Mack Avenue in Grosse Pointe Woods.
The 16-valve, twin-cam Grand Am SE. Built with the enduring strength of high-performance steel. Because only the strong survive. The Grand Am was solid form design.
GM employees and family members take advantage of a new $750 cash bonus on the solid form Grand Am SE at the #1 Pontiac GMC dealer in the country, Jim Cosley.
Enjoy the freedom to go where you want with a scooter from Plumbrook Mobility Center, around the house, at the mall, or just to enjoy a beautiful day. Our scooters will get you there. We have the largest selection in Michigan with leading brands like Amigo and Pride. At Plumbrook Mobility, we guarantee you the lowest price. We will not be undersold. We also feature previously used scooters, outstanding service, and we back all warranties, parts, and labor. Enjoy the freedom to go where you want with a scooter that fits your needs. Visit Plumbrook Mobility Center on 14 Mile Road between Ryan and DeQuinder.
The 16-valve, twin-cam Grand Am SE. Built with the enduring strength of high-performance steel. Because only the strong survive. The Grand Am was solid form design.
GM employees and family members take advantage of a new $750 cash bonus on the solid form Grand Am SE at the #1 Pontiac GMC dealer in the country, Jim Cosley.
Burden of Proof, weekdays 12:30 Eastern on CNN.
Tonight, who won it? The nation chews its nails as the presidential cliffhanger rolls on. Joining us in Washington, the senior advisor to the Gore campaign, Jack Quinn. In Augusta, Georgia, the former Secretary of State, George Shultz, the top advisor to George W. Bush. Back in D.C., Pat Buchanan, the Reform Party's presidential candidate for election 2000. Also a top-flight roundtable in New York, renowned constitutional lawyer Floyd Abrams. In Los Angeles, veteran political journalist Sandra Van Oker. And in Atlanta, CNN senior political analyst Bill Schneider. All that and more next on Larry King Live. Let's begin with the latest on the counting going on in Florida, and we'll go to our correspondent on the scene, Mike Betcher. What's up, Mike? What's the latest?
Well, Larry, so close and yet so far, the count continues. We thought it would be over today, and when we arrived here early yesterday morning, we were told that by the end of business today, they had hoped to have the recount. Well, it's not completely done yet. There are 2 counts, and we'll try to be very clear about this. 53 counties being counted by the state of Florida, reporting here at the Division of Elections. They show a gap of 1,784 between Governor Bush and Vice President Gore, with, of course, Governor Bush in the lead. Now, there is a second count done by the Associated Press. They are ahead of the state count, and we'll try to explain what's going on there. They are reporting 65 of 67 counties and only a gap of 225 votes between Governor Bush and Vice President Gore, with, of course, Governor Bush in the lead. Now, why the gap? Well, I talked to someone earlier today, about an hour ago on the phone, who's worked up here in the state capitol, who still does, who says he believes that the discrepancy is because the counties that are still out there, not reported to the state, have some mistakes in them, and they want to make sure that those figures are right, so they're holding back. They're trying to make sure that these big discrepancies that they haven't reported yet are indeed big discrepancies. So they haven't reported it to the state yet, and I guess that's what's going on, Larry. That's what they believe is going on here between the 2 figures.
Thanks, Mike. Well reported. Mike Betcher's been on top of the scene all day in Tallahassee. Now let's go to Washington and Jack Quinn, well-known name, former White House counsel, Gore campaign senior advisor. The campaign has made a decision today. There are definitely going to be lawsuits, Jack.
Larry, I can't say whether there are going to be lawsuits or whether they're not going to be lawsuits. What I can tell you is that we are absolutely committed to make sure that the most sacred right of the American people to be able to cast a vote freely and have it count will be vindicated in this election.
If you feel that Palm Beach and many voters were turned, many voters had double votes, they voted for two presidents because of confusion, some voted for the wrong person, it said, are you going to challenge that particular county?
Let me tell you what I believe, Larry. I believe with all my heart that more people in the state of Florida left their homes and their workplaces on Tuesday, went to the polls intending to vote for Al Gore than those who intended to vote for George Bush. I think Al Gore won the vote in the state of Florida. I think that he, therefore, should have been elected president on Tuesday. I think that Governor Bush has an extraordinary opportunity and obligation right now to understand what's going on, to appreciate that if he were to do anything that would in any way denigrate the right of these people to have their votes counted, that he would assume the presidency with a cloud that would just be horrible for him and for the country.
Well, what do you want to happen if those people were denied their right to, that we all have, to express it because of an error or stupidity or a ballot done poorly? What do you want? You want it redone? What do you want to happen? What's the solution?
I want us to go through a dignified, respectful, careful, and expeditious process to make sure that the will of the people who went to the polls on Election Day in Florida is reflected in the outcome.
Is the only way to do that to have them go again? What's another way to do it?
Well, there are any number of solutions to this. I mean, this is not entirely new territory. You've had situations where ballots like the 19,000 we're concerned about, and I trust that the viewers know what we're talking about, why we're concerned about this, why we believe they were Gore ballots. But let's assume for the moment that we've got 19,000 votes that we think were ours that were not counted. But there have been any number of situations in which this sort of thing has happened. Some courts, have decided that those votes ought to be apportioned in the same proportion as the other votes that were in fact counted. The most important thing to get across today, I think, is that the recount is not the end of this process, because it is simply a recount of the votes that were counted on Election Day. We have, we believe, 19,000 votes that were unlawfully put aside and not counted. And the other thing, Larry, I want to make one very important point here. This is not about Al Gore. This is not about George Bush. This is about the right of those 19,000 Americans and the 200 million Americans who voted with them to vote, to engage in, again, the most sacred trust and obligation we have in this country, the right to vote in our elections.
Do you think you will prevail?
Yes, I do, because I believe...
You think that the courts are going to come to your aid? It's going to have to be the courts.
You know what, Larry, I believe today, to the bottom of my heart, that more people went out in the state of Florida to vote for Al Gore than to vote for George Bush. I believe we won the state of Florida. I know we won the popular vote from east to west, north to south, across this country. I know that the American people on Election Day in the year 2000 chose Albert Gore to be the next president of the United States.
And do you think he will be?
Yes, because we have had 200+ years of people doing everything they could to preserve and sanctify this extraordinary democracy that we've got. It is inconceivable to me that either judges or Governor Bush or anyone else would do anything to thwart the will of the American people. And I do believe that in the coming days, it's going to be abundantly clear that Al Gore won the state of Florida and therefore won the presidency of the United States. And I believe that on January 20th, he's going to be the man to raise his right hand and take the oath of office.
Thanks, Jack. Jack Quinn, former White House counsel and Gore campaign senior advisor. When we come back, the former Secretary of State, the Honorable George Shultz, might have different thoughts. Don't go away.
The Democrats who are politicizing and distorting these events risk doing so at the expense of our democracy. One of the options that they seem to be looking at is new elections. Our democratic process calls for a vote on Election Day. It does not call for us to continue voting until someone likes the outcome. Throughout this process, it's important that no party to this election act in a precipitous manner or distort an existing voting pattern in an effort to misinform the public.
Larry King is brought to you by Expedia.com. Don't just travel, travel right.
Recently, I've been urging you to remember our name, Expedia.com. By repeating our name over and over, 6 million happy travelers have logged on to Expedia.com, leaving millions of you still missing out. Perhaps the problem is my irritating British accent. So for those of you who still don't remember Expedia.com, here goes.
Book the right trip at the right price at Expedia.com.
Hope that helps. Don't just travel, travel right at Expedia.com.
I can't take it anymore. I need a break from the fans and the paparazzi. I'm going to Priceline.com and planning the ultimate vacation. Top shelf airline tickets, classy rental cars, swanky hotel room. And then when this gig is over, I'm gone, baby. I'm gone.
As you can see, the terms are good. The rate is low. There are no points.
But...
Yes?
Can't you come down a little on the interest?
It's a very good offer.
Okay, then.
Great.
Thanks, anyway. Next.
Want banks to compete over you? Come to LendingTree.com. Fill out one form and get up to 4 offers within hours. When banks compete, you win at LendingTree.com.
Elaine Lee starts a new job on Monday. She knows to roll over her 401k. She doesn't know that rolling over company stock could one day cost her thousands in extra taxes. See how we earn it. Solomon Smith Barney.
This will have many more days to go, by the way. We have absentee ballots, ballots coming from across the sea, people out of the country, certification that could go right through next week, could go longer with lawsuits. And we now go to Augusta, Georgia. George Shultz, Secretary of State under Ronald Reagan, held other cabinet posts as well, advisor to George W. Bush in the Bush campaign. You heard, Mr. Secretary, what Jack Quinn said. He says he's convinced that more people left their homes in Florida to vote for Gore. Somebody is disenfranchised. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that we have a constitutional process, and we have in the state of Florida a set of rules that they have established about the conduct of elections. So far as I can see, they are conscientiously trying to follow their procedures, and we ought to respect them and to be ready and prepared to accept the results as they announce them.
One of the procedures in the constitutional government is the right to go to court. Do you respect their right, the other side's right, to challenge this?
Anyone can go to court and challenge, but I don't quite see what they're going to challenge. And I do think that people ought to take a look and remember what Richard Nixon did in 1960. You remember the vote was very close then. And as distinct from the Florida case, where there are no allegations of fraud, there were real allegations of fraud in Illinois, and Nixon was urged to file a suit, and he said no, the election stands, and we don't want to put the country through that. Personally, it seems to me that Florida has its procedures. People have been ballots have been disqualified before. In the '96 election, a lot of ballots were disqualified for voting twice for a given office, and that's their rule. So they follow that rule, and they have a process that's going on. They have a recount because that's what their law calls for, and so we should respectfully wait and see what that brings. Obviously, since it's so close, you have to wait for the absentee ballots because there's no reason why people overseas, people serving in the military, should be deprived of a vote.
Are you therefore asking Vice President Gore tonight to do what Richard Nixon did, and if he loses in that vote, not challenge in Palm Beach and give it up? I'm just saying that there is a process for establishing the victor in Florida. And the people of Florida, their officials, are conducting that process. And when they get through doing it, then it seems to me that's the result, and we should accept that result. What did you think of the ballot itself? Did you have any problems with it?
Well, I'm not that close to it. It apparently was somewhat confusing, although at least people say that. Although I've seen tests when people are given it and they vote and they don't seem to have any troubles doing that. I might say that, as I understand it, the Reform Party and Pat Buchanan have quite a few registered voters in Palm Beach, and so it isn't surprising that some people would vote for him.
You've been around a long time. You've served your country well. In this instance, whoever goes into that office in January 20th obviously has no mandate. Will it be a difficult presidency?
I think that whoever goes into the office does have a mandate. He will have one, and it's up to him to be president of all the people. And I've been encouraged all along during the campaign by the way Governor Bush has conducted himself and his constant refrain of having a more civilized Washington, of reaching across party lines, and of trying to find consensus. And it seems to me very clear that that's what a new president will have to do.
Do you think that President-elect Bush might put a Democrat or two on the cabinet?
Well, that's up to him, of course. There are some good Democrats, and so he'll have to decide on his cabinet. I don't want to try to prejudge that, but there is going to be a process of reaching across, and Governor Bush has said that long before it turned out that the election was so close. That comes natural to him. He's a healer, he's a leader, he'll bring people together.
Mr. Secretary, do you think this is going to be resolved without a crisis?
Well, I hope that it'll be resolved by the officials of the state of Florida as they count these votes, including the absentee ballots. And that's the way it ought to be resolved.
Thank you so much. Always good seeing you, George.
Thank you.
The former Secretary of State, George Shultz, speaking as an advisor as well to Governor Bush. When we come back, the man in question, Pat Buchanan. Don't go away.
I believe that their actions to try to presumptively crown themselves the victors, to try to put in place a transition, run the risk of dividing the American people and creating a sense of confusion. Let the legal system run its course. Let the true and accurate will of the people prevail. And if at the end of the process, George Bush is the victor, we will honor and obviously respect those results.
When was the last time you felt 284 horses tugging at your soul? When was the last time you immersed yourself in hand-tufted virgin leather? Can you really put a price on this kind of perfection?
Actually, you can. Because this $70,000 car could cost you over $326,000 in retirement savings. We just thought you should know. Ask a financial advisor about Sun America, the retirement specialist.
No two eyes see the same world. two businesses are identical. And now, one company creates internet solutions unique to you. Fujitsu. The possibilities are infinite.
What do you want to do on the internet? Max out your e-business opportunities? Connect branch offices with complete security? Exchange confidential information? Cylink can help with security solutions that are easy to implement and easy to manage from anywhere on your network. So if you want the security to do your e-business thing, talk to Cylink and do what you want to do. Cylink, securing e-business.
Do what you want to do now.
Of a colorful vacation. Only Puerto Rico sounds like this. Only Puerto Rico puts it all within your reach.
Pat Buchanan joins us from Washington. You got 3,407 votes in Palm Beach County. You didn't campaign there or spend money there. What do you make of it, Pat?
Well, certainly I think we got some votes in Palm Beach County, but I don't doubt the number of those ballots, those votes that were cast for me, probably were intended for Vice President Gore. I do know that by sort of from extrapolation and by comparison with other counties in the state. But as a matter of fact, Larry, those ballots were cast for me. And my name was the one that they registered. And I think those votes have to go to me. And I don't see how you can take that back, even though folks are saying they intended to vote for someone else. I think it stands.
Does it make you feel funny?
No, it does not. I did nothing wrong, and I looked at the ballot, and I do believe the ballot's somewhat confusing. You've got Mr. Bush's name first on the left column, Mr. Gore's name second, but if you vote the second button, it votes for me. So I think someone who went in there very quickly and didn't look at it could fairly easily vote by mistake for me. But I don't have any fault here. I do believe this, Larry, that in the last analysis, they've got to take a look at who got the ballots. They have to count them, they have to recount them, and count the absentees. And when that is done, Florida ought to certify the winner of the Florida vote, and that's the next President of the United States. And I hope and pray Al Gore, if it is not him, has the sense of honor and dignity that Richard Nixon had when he simply out and out refused to challenge in any way the returns from Illinois and Texas.
So even though what you're saying here is even though he may be right, even though those votes may have won it for him, he should back off if he loses Florida with all the other votes counted.
He didn't get the votes. The votes went for me. And so when all the votes are counted, if he's got a plurality or a majority, he wins the state and we all ought to rally behind him. Conversely, if Governor Bush and Mr. Cheney win, I think Mr. Gore ought to give it up. I hope he will not drag this through courts all the way up until the inaugural. I think that would be terribly divisive, and I think it would tear the country apart. Let's let the people in Florida certify the winner of that state, and if it's Mr. Bush, let's get on with the transition.
How about the statement that Jack Quinn made? If they're right, more people in Florida went out on Tuesday to vote for Gore.
Well, you know, look, I don't know the truth of that. Well, maybe they did, but how does Jack know that for certain? And, I mean, and there's a probability that some people voted for me, Larry, that intended to vote for Gore. I concede that outright and openly. But if they voted for me, how do you decide? You can't have a revote in all of West Palm Beach County. You know, that is grossly unfair to Mr. Bush, because all the Nader people would immediately vote for Mr. Gore there. And moreover, the electorate has been totally contaminated by 48 hours of all this media being poured into it. So I think the vote has got to... You cannot do it over in one county. It's grossly unjust to Mr. Bush. This is a heavily Democratic county. And as I say, all Nader's votes would automatically just about go to Mr. Gore.
What do you think this is going to do? There's no mandate for the next president, is there?
I disagree. Jack Kennedy won by 100,000 votes, and that was questionable whether it was legal or not. And he went and set the country off in a direction in foreign policy and domestic policy. It was a dramatic turn from Dwight Eisenhower. And if Mr. Bush wins this, the best thing for him to do is to run a Republican, strong Republican administration, a conservative administration, compassionate conservatism, and then in 2 years let the voters decide if that's what they wanted.
Thanks, Pat. Pat Buchanan, in the news whether he wants to be or not. Pat Buchanan from Washington. When we come back, we're going to meet an attorney who's filing a lawsuit. Thing Pat didn't want to happen is going to happen, and we'll meet the man he's representing right after this.
Is there an insurance company that believes knowledge is critical in managing risk? Without question, the St. Paul.
Today, business is composed of two worlds. One of brick and mortar, the other a digital reality. And as these worlds continue to grow, one company will be right there, delivering the products and materials needed for success. From the steel that builds our cities to the silicon that builds our networks. Norfolk Southern, moving the goods that move the economy.
I'm not going to become one of those old men who sit in lawn chairs on driveways and regret adventures I never took.
Joining us now in West Palm Beach, Florida, is Howard Weiss, one of the attorneys representing Andre Fladel. Mr. Fladel is one of the voters who is representing that he was disenfranchised and is suing for a revote. Andre, what happened to you on Tuesday?
Well, for the 22 years I've lived in Palm Beach County, on every ballot I've ever seen, on every ballot I've ever voted, on every page I've ever voted, they always have the name on one side and the punch holes on the other. And this has been going on for 22 years. I've never seen a ballot in any other way. In every ballot I've ever seen for 22 years, the Republican and Democrat were next to each other, first and second. There was never anything between them. When I went to vote, I gave them my license, my identification, my voter's registration. They said, do you have any questions? I said, no, I voted many times before. I went in, I flipped the page. I saw the first name, which was Bush Cheney, the first hole. I saw the second name, which was Gore Lieberman, and the second punch hole. And I proceeded and punched the second punch hole. I then turned to the next page. And you know, in this county, we only have 5 minutes to vote. This isn't a freebie where you can stay as long as you want. And we had referendum questions. So I punched the next, as I always did. I finished my voting, and I left. When I then went to the beach later that day, many of my friends were there. We were at a restaurant, Boston's on the beach, and they said that the ballot was difficult, and they had great difficulty with the president vote. I thought they were pretty silly because I vote a lot. I figured they don't know how to vote. And they said, well, how did you vote? And I said, just go down the list and match up the hole. They said, it's not like that on that page. I said, sure it is. We went and got a copy of the ballot, and we found out at that point that you had to look diagonal, zigzag, across in some fashion I had never anticipated.
All right, so Howard Weiss, what are you contending then in the lawsuit representing Mr. Fladel? What are you asking them to do?
We're asking them to invalidate the election results in Palm Beach County because there's a reasonable doubt as to whether or not those results reflect the will of the people. And the basis of that lawsuit is the following, that they violated the Florida statutes. The Florida statutes require that the name be on the left side and the punch hole be on the right side. That was not done here. Rather than doing so, with respect on the Democrats and Republicans, the Democrats following the Republicans, the punch hole was on the right-hand side. However, the punch hole with respect to the Reform Party, Buchanan, and the minor political parties were on the left side in a direct pattern, vertical with the punch hole for the Republican and Democratic parties. By reason of that, there was confusion. As a result of that, there were not just the 3,000 votes in question as to Mr. Buchanan, but there were 19,000 votes that were invalidated. 19,000 ballots are invalidated because people reasonably thought that they were voting. There were 2 punch holes next to Gore Lieberman, and they punched both.
And what redress of grievance are you asking? How does the state make this up to your client?
I would like to vote for who I want to vote for. I would like to vote for Gore, and I would like to vote for Lieberman. I don't want to vote for Pat Buchanan. He may be a nice person, but he's not for my vote. This country is looking at a ballot on this television that looks like this. That's not what we see when we vote. This is what we see when we vote. This country is looking at which black mark is higher. Why don't they try seeing which one is further? The punch hole isn't a black mark looking at a television screen. About 1/16 of an inch apart, you're looking at in the direction on this level. When the country thinks we can't identify which dot is higher, I can identify a higher dot, but you can't identify dots laying across a plane on a right angle. That dot that I punched was right next to the name of Gore and Lieberman. I punched the right dot. I had no idea that in this country you have to read zigzag and diagonal to know who you're voting for. I never even looked at the second page.
Weren't there arrows, Andre, telling you where to go?
No, there were arrows on both sides pointing to the middle. But look, I read the dictionary, I read encyclopedias, I read textbooks. I've never read in our language anything of any type that was a puzzle. I didn't go in there to take a test. I went in there to vote for the President of the United States.
Howard, do you think you have a chance here?
Yes, absolutely. I think that the ballot was definitely violative of the Florida statutes. I think that the second name should have been as required since the Democrats came in second in the gubernatorial election. Their name should have been in second position. In terms of the punch holes, the Reform Party was placed in second position. That placed a reasonable doubt as to whether the election represents the will of the people. The Florida statutes were indeed violated. The punch holes were not placed to the right of the candidates, and I feel that both as to the 3,000 votes which Buchanan obtained, and more importantly is the 19,000 ballots that were invalidated because people thought they were punching for Gore and Lieberman rather than just one single vote, and they followed the elections. Any instructions and said, go to the right and punch the hole to the right. If they did so, they voted for Gore and Lieberman.
Howard Weiss and Andre Fladel, and they're bringing it to court. When we come back, 2 congressmen for a brief couple of moments to discuss this, and then our panel, which will include Floyd Abrams, Sander Van Oker, and Bill Schneider. We'll meet our 2 congressmen quickly right after this.
Who brought down the most infamous lord of the drug trade? Kevin Pablo on CNN Perspectives. Sunday, 10 Eastern, only on CNN.
Don't call me to tell me that, just buy them. All right, excellent. Hello, you're killing me. Sell it. What are you, 4 years old? To be in the market, you've got to stay connected.
Yeah. You see what Chanbrang Steel did?
Oh, what do you got there?
Email alert from Ameritrade. I tell them what stocks I want tracked. They tell me when things happen.
On your cell phone?
Or pager, or PDA, or computer.
Note to self, email alerts with Ameritrade.
You get free research, too.
Do you? Oh. Well, he gets free research, too.
I'll show you.
Oh, please. Wait, it's only $8 to make a trade?
$8? That's my roll.
Oh, it's me too.
You want to handle that stuff?
No, I'm fine.
Open a cash account with $500 and receive 2 free round-trip airline tickets when you purchase a 7-night hotel stay. Plus, 10 internet equity trades commission-free in the first month. Restrictions apply. Go to Ameritrade.com. Ameritrade. It's how you get somewhere on Wall Street.
Burden of Proof. Weekdays, 12:30 Eastern on CNN.
The voices and noise that you hear in the background are the protesters there outside the courthouse in West Palm Beach, where lots of goings-on are taking place over this hullabaloo, over this incredible election. We go to Congressman Lincoln Diaz Ballard. He's a Republican of Florida, and he is co-chairman of the George W. Bush campaign. With him is Congressman Robert Wexler, Democrat of Florida. He was with us last night as well. We have a few moments with these gentlemen. Congressman Diaz Ballard, what do you say to the gentleman we just had on who went to vote for Gore, voted for the wrong thing because he'd been voting for years, he punched the wrong thing? How do we redress his grievance?
Well, I'm really sorry that that happened. And I looked at that ballot. It was the same ballot that was used in 1996 and in the primary this year. There was never a challenge before. A number of people, by the way, Larry, contacted our offices after the election, especially some elderly people, because they were confused here in Miami-Dade County. Unfortunately, some confusion inevitably exists in any election. But we have a procedure, which is the Florida law establishes it. When any election is won by less than 0.5%, there's an automatic recount. And the ballot, if you saw Jeannie Moe's on CNN, I was watching earlier this evening, and she showed it to a lot of people, and almost everybody got it right. The reality of the matter is that the Florida law says that if you vote for more than one candidate for one position, that vote, unfortunately, it has to be invalidated.
All right, Congressman Wexler, what Congressman Diaz-Balart is saying is, it's unfortunate, it's sad, but it's the breaks of the game. You have no way out.
No, that's not the full story. The facts speak for themselves here, Larry. 19,000 people had their votes invalidated because of an illegal ballot that was extremely confusing. And with all due respect to my friend Lincoln Diaz-Balart, the ballot that was used this past Tuesday in Palm Beach County was not used 4 years ago. This was the first time it's been used in at least 10 years. And the supervisor herself issued a warning, Larry, on the day of the election, late in the day, to the poll workers, saying that people had complained before the ballots had closed that there was mass confusion and that poll workers should warn the voters not to vote for two candidates.
That was late in the
about
day?
4:30.
Okay.
About 4:30.
Hold it right there. Congressman Diaz-Balart, what do you make of that?
Larry, 4 years ago, when the turnout was a lot less, 15,000 votes were invalidated in Palm Beach County.
So something's wrong in Palm Beach then, right?
This year, 19,000 votes
but isn't
invalidated.
something wrong then? Larry,
unfortunately, people make
Robert, don't
mistakes.
interrupt.
But well, is it better to have people be able to vote for both candidates? Is that what the opposition is saying?
But in other words, Congressman Diaz, you're not concerned that in 2 straight elections, 15,000 and then 19,000 votes were invalidated with people voting for 2 people? Why didn't they change the ballot?
No, unfortunately, people make mistakes, but what the law is clear on is that you don't vote for more than one candidate for one position.
Obviously,
and when they do that, unfortunately, we don't know which of the 2 candidates they meant to vote for, and so Florida law is clear. The key here is that Florida law has got to be followed, and it's being followed.
Yes, Congressman Diaz-Balart is repeating the numbers that the Republican Party has been spewing. They are false. In 1996, there was not in Palm Beach County 15,000 votes that were disqualified because people voted for 2 candidates for president. In fact, the number was about half of that. But let's not lose sight of the primary issue. The election of the President of the United States hinges on a couple of hundred votes in the state of Florida, and in just the Palm Beach County region, 23,000 votes were effectively invalidated. This is not about Al Gore or George Bush. This is about democracy. This is about protecting Americans' right to vote and have their vote be counted.
And Congressman Diaz-Balart, how would you respond to that?
I agree exactly, and that's why we have procedures and we have law. And the law says that a recount occurs if the loser asks for it when the winner wins by less than 1/2%. The state is going through that procedure. It's going through it with tremendous seriousness and with dignity, and we have to follow this procedure and not make it now one where, like I heard Mr. Daley said, they're going to court. That is the judicialization of our democracy. That's extremely dangerous. And these allegations that, like Florida statute says, the Florida law says that if it's a paper ballot, names have to be on the left. No, not in computerized ballot. They're even misstating the law, and this judicialization of our democracy is an extreme threat
I got a whole bunch of guests
to our democracy.
Congressman Diaz-Balart, why not let the judge decide it then?
Oh, no. Obviously, anyone can go to court. What I'm saying is that the law is clear that the misstatements were made before with regard to statements such as you have to vote, all names have to be on one side of the ballot. That's a misstatement of the law. We're following the law.
And Congressman
the state is following the law.
Not.
But Larry, my friend Lincoln Diaz-Balart knows this better than anybody. This is the United States of America. This is not Cuba. In America, we go to vote and we expect our votes to be counted. And when that count is illegitimate A court of law must address the issue. And to elect the President of the United States on anything less than that would shake the foundation of democracy in America.
We will do more tomorrow night. We thank you both very much.
We're in America. Whoever gets more votes wins, and it's very serious when instead of following the tradition of American democracy, the opposition, like in this case, the Gore campaign, starts judicializing the elections in the United States. That's
Thank you both very much. Congressman Lincoln Diaz-Balart and Congressman Robert Wexler. When we come back, Floyd Abrams, Santa Van Oker, and Bill Schneider. Don't go away.
Oh, that's weird. I think it's closed.
What's going on?
It's closed.
Seems to be the problem.
Closed.
Amazon.com changed the way people shop.
Hello? Weird.
That is weird.
HP technology makes it happen.
It's closed!
Buying a carpet deep cleaner can be confusing. You may think they have steam or heat the water, but in fact, they don't. Presenting the Bissell Pro Heat, the only upright deep cleaner with a built-in heater, which makes the hot tap water up to 25 degrees hotter, so it cleans better than all its competitors. Bissell, we mean clean. Now get the improved cleaning power of real heat in a handy portable. Introducing the Bissell Little Green Pro Heat.
First meeting?
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, are you trading online yet?
I'm looking into it.
You know, you should try My Discount Broker.
Who is it?
My Discount Broker. Hey, Sarah. You can apply online.
Really?
Yeah, and fund your account with an electronic check.
Could I use a regular check?
Sure, or you could just wire the money.
Great. So who is your broker?
My Discount Broker. Excuse me.
A name. I need a name.
MyDiscountBroker.com.
I can't take it anymore. I need a break from the fans and the paparazzi. I'm going to Priceline.com and planning the ultimate vacation. Top shelf airline tickets, classy rental cars, swanky hotel room. And then when this gig is over, I'm gone, baby. I'm gone.
Let's welcome our panel. They are the renowned constitutional attorney Floyd Abrams. He joins us from New York. Here in Los Angeles is Santa Van Oker, who's reported politics for NBC and ABC and early on in CBS, New York Times, Washington Post. And he hosts Movies and Times on the History Channel. And a very familiar face around these parts, Bill Schneider, CNN senior political analyst, syndicated columnist. We now, I see up on the board, have 66 counties, right, Bill?
We have 66 counties of Florida. Florida has 67 altogether, so there's only one county out. And according to the Associated Press, Bush now leads Al Gore in the recount by 229 votes.
And that is, of course, unofficial, but it's an AP tab.
Okay. An AP tab.
Floyd Abrams, we've heard the arguments through the night. We heard the two congressmen. Who's right?
Well, my reaction, Larry, is that this is precisely the sort of thing that may have to be decided by a court. When the argument's made that this is a judicialization of our political process, I think that's really inside out. I think the reality is here, in an election in which the vice president carried the popular vote in the country and has at least a very plausible claim that things have been done which prevented, probably in good faith, but prevented a significant number of people in Florida from voting as they wanted to. I don't think that it is a bad thing for somebody to go to court and say in substance, look, I wanted to vote this way, I was misled. Maybe he'll lose. You know, these cases are hard to win. They're supposed to be hard to win. It's an uphill battle for the vice president if he or one of these voters goes to court. But he may win, or they may win. And it seems to me that our country is not as fragile as a lot of people think. I think we can take it because we want to know the truth about who really won this election.
What's your read on it, Sander?
I agree with Floyd. I think that I've been thinking all day about John Finley Dunn and Mr. Dooley. And Mr. Dooley said, politics ain't beanbag. This is a very tough call, but again, to quote somebody, other person, Bismarck, who said of governance, it's like sausage. You better not watch it being made if you want to eat it.
Would you, if you were a citizen who voted Tuesday, and you were like the gentleman we had on, felt that you had voted incorrectly through the fault of the ballot, would you do as he is doing?
Of course I would.
You would sue. All right, that's two, Bill. Bill Schneider, I know you have to analyze these things. Do you think we're going to go to court? Do you think there will be a court case somehow resolved before January 20th?
Well, I think that certainly there'll be a case brought to court, and I frankly hope the judge would throw it out. Because once you start going into court, look, you open up the floodgates. You're going to find confusing ballots all over the country. Believe me, there were a lot of states that Al Gore carried, Iowa, Wisconsin, maybe Oregon. It hasn't been declared yet. New Hampshire was carried by Bush, but states carried by very tiny margins. I'm sure the Bush campaign can find people who say, look, the ballot here was confusing. I think that I was misled, and this can go on and on and on. So, it is a misfortune, but nobody has charged that it was fraudulent or it's been debated whether it was illegal. If you can show it was illegal, that's something else.
So if it had happened to you, you would not sue?
I would say, you know, the ballot was confusing. I voted the wrong way, but that is a misfortune.
Floyd, that's the other aspect of it, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is, and I...
Breaks of the game.
I respect that view, and look, I don't think that presidential candidates ought lightly to go to court, because it does have the potential for not only slowing things down, but for delegitimatizing the system. Here, I think it's the opposite. I think in this case, you almost need a judge to say, look, this was basically fair. Sure, some people got taken advantage of. That's life. But I think without that, I mean, if we are left in a situation in this country where the vice president has carried the day broadly across the country in the court of public opinion by votes, where he has a really strong case, and more important, where voters have a really strong case that they were taken advantage of, in good faith, but taken advantage of, the idea of having a judge say, one way or the other, look, this is either tolerable or intolerable in our country, I think it's a good idea.
Well, I'd like
Sandra, to ask Bill, hold on one second. Sandra, that makes the governing, I guess, easier if a judge has said it.
We have to legitimize this presidential election. I am not optimistic we're going to be able to do it, but we've got to legitimize it somehow.
Bill, what's wrong with legitimizing it? How else could it be legitimized without a court?
Well, it'd be nice if the court said that, you know, there is no legal redress, but I'm wondering an interesting question, maybe Mr. Abrams knows. If the judge decides that the ballot was somehow unfair, what's he going to do? Is he going to order the county to re-vote? And then the circumstances of that re-vote trouble me greatly. You're going to have a re-vote among a small group of voters who know that they are choosing in Palm Beach County the next president of the United States, something that voters nowhere knew on November 7th all by themselves. And also, they will know something that nobody else knew in November 7th, namely how the rest of the country voted. Is that a fair process? I'm not sure.
Well, I think what you have to do is to balance that against the loss to the voters and the loss to all of us as a country in having a result which may well be inconsistent with what the country and the people of Florida wanted. I think that's very heavy duty, and
it's a very interesting aspect. It causes one to think, and we'll have Van Oka do that for us when we come back right after this.
My company is the designated K&R consultant.
What is K&R?
Kidnap and ransom.
At any time, a hostage can be taken and hidden anywhere in the world.
Your husband isn't dead. He's alive. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure he gets home safe.
Now, it's one man's job to find them.
So we're on it.
Absolutely. Meg Ryan.
Why are you doing this?
Russell Crowe.
I told you you'd have to trust me, and you said you could.
Proof of Life. This film is not yet rated. Starts December 8th.
Here's my dilemma. I want to stay invested in technology stocks, but lately I just can't find the time to do the research.
Yeah. Technology is a hard industry to stay on top of.
I mean, is there anything that you have that can help me stay in technology without staying up all night?
Well, the Fidelity Select Technology Portfolios.
What's that?
Those are managed by analysts that spend all their time focused on that sector. So, having our people do the research that you don't have the time to do, that's a good thing.
Solves my problem.
Good.
To invest, call, click, or visit Fidelity.
Mr. Wallace.
Anne, you are just going to love these terms.
Your terms just aren't right.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
Mr. Regan, your rates are a little high.
That's not good. What's the word I'm thinking of?
I think it's no.
Mm-hmm. No.
Want banks to compete over you? Come to LendingTree.com. Fill out one form and get up to 4 offers within hours.
Oh, what a lovely time.
When banks compete, you win at LendingTree.com.
Flight 223, now arriving.
Oh, that's my... excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I had a little extra time.
Extend your stay. It's an option with business options. Only at Intercontinental and Crowne Plaza hotels.
Before we have a question for Bill and Floyd, I think Santa has a thought on the media's role here.
Well, I think we'd be a lot better off today if the media on Tuesday night had not gone into that classic case of premature exaggeration, going back and forth.
Good line.
And I think that the networks have a lot on their shoulders, and they're admitting it today, for having created the kind of climate we're going to have to deal with.
But we still have this voting machine. We'd still have the closeness of the vote. Everything would be the same.
Yeah, but what was so exacerbating about the other night was it kept going back and forth, creating the...
But that doesn't change this vote total.
No, but it creates the kind of atmosphere in which we're going to have to proceed.
It led to this.
Yeah.
Okay. Bill Schneider, who could end it if a judge couldn't end it?
If the vote in Florida is announced, even if it's extremely close, they've done a count, they've done a recount, they've counted the overseas ballot. No matter how close it is, there's one guy who I think could put an end to it, and that's the President of the United States. We haven't heard from him yet, but he's there as the protector of the Constitution. That's what he swore when he was inaugurated back in 1997. And I think if he spoke out and said, look, we can quarrel with these results, they'd be debated forever, there's a shadow of legitimacy over this, but you know, we have to respect the integrity of the Electoral College process, and I think this process should come to an end. President Clinton could do that.
That integrity also could mean some electors could vote differently, right, Bill? That's part of the Constitution, too. They don't have to.
They don't have to, that's right. And if they choose, they could decide that they want to abide by the will of the people. After all, the Electoral College is sovereign in this process. The popular vote has moral and political standing. Gore is leading in the popular vote right now. It hasn't been completed. And so some electors could decide that to abide by the will of the people and to vote for Al Gore for president. That would be
constitutional as well.
That's
Floyd,
right.
how do you think and Bill and Sandra, how do you think the Founding Fathers would have dealt with this?
Oh, I know. They would have had a duel.
Bill?
They would have had a duel. They did it. Alexander Hamilton wrote the Constitution. Right. He was killed in a duel.
Same case.
Also, the Founding Fathers, for all their greatness, didn't exactly think awfully well of the masses. And,
true.
You know, the Founding Fathers would have been very happy to have this decided in the House of Representatives and take it away from the people. One of the reasons that I'm, what shall I say, sympathetic, or at least not unsympathetic, to the idea of at least having a judge pass upon lawsuits brought in this area is that I think that it is part of the process to assure that the people who are in fact serving as the electors deserve to be there. I mean, what could be more inconsistent with the whole theory of our system than to have 25 people from Florida who really got less votes, or for whom the people of Florida wanted not to vote to go to attend this convening of cardinals, as it were. So,
let me get a break. I'll hold you right there. Let me get a break.
Sure.
And when we come back, we'll ask each of the gentlemen to tell us what they think will happen. They've been around a while. Don't go away.
Is there an insurance company with a 146-year history of proving that your trust is not misplaced? Without question, the St. Paul.
Got yourself into too much credit card debt? Why not point and click your way out of debt with a second mortgage from Ditech.com? Whether you have equity or no equity, good credit or not so good credit, Ditech has a second mortgage with absolutely no closing costs to help you lower your monthly payments now. So point and click your way out of high-interest, non-tax deductible credit card debt at Ditech.com or call us at 1-800-71-FIX.
What helps create wireless home networks? Texas Instruments Programmable DSP. The hardware and software behind wireless technology. From the world leader in DSP and analog, Texas Instruments.
My name is Master Chief Billy Sunday, and I am God.
Tomorrow, Robert De Niro and Cuba Gooding Jr. go beyond the limits.
That's a Russian submarine. He'll be dead before you get to him.
Men of Honor, rated R.
Floyd Abrams, what's going to happen?
Well, let me answer it this way. First, what I don't think is going to happen is that we're going to have problems starting December 18th of legitimacy. That is to say, I think one way or the other, one candidate or another will, even if this is in court, if this isn't resolved by the time the electors are supposed to meet, I think it's more likely than not that one or the other will withdraw. One or the other will allow the other person to become president. That said, though, I think we will have a judicial look at this. I view this as a very close case. You heard the congressman arguing about what Florida law is about where the names have to be on the left side or not. I mean, that's a strict issue of law for a judge to decide. You heard them arguing about whether there's confusion of a sort that should lead to a new election. I think that's an issue of law. I think we're going to have a judge in Florida and maybe some appellate judges also on a super expedited basis make a decision about whether this was sufficiently unfair that a new election is required. And I think the vice president's chances are pretty decent about getting a new election in Florida.
Sander?
All I wish for is no rush to judgment. Everybody was saying today we'll know by the end of the day. We won't know squat by the end of the day. We may know something when the absentee ballots are in and counted, and I'd like to leave it to the good officials of the state of Florida for them to come to a conclusion before we go anywhere else.
In other words, they come to a conclusion, then a lawsuit, if there's a lawsuit.
Let them decide. It's their state. And let them decide it in all deliberate speed, but deliberate speed.
Bill, what do you think?
I think there better be a rush to judgment because the people of the United States and of the entire world are waiting to see what the outcome of this is. My guess is in the end, a judge will look at this and decide this is a political matter and the courts really ought not to be involved in it. What's important here is to realize what the American people did on Tuesday. I mean, it's amazing. They split the Congress down the middle. They were divided in the electoral vote. They were closely divided in the popular vote. Does this mean Americans are deeply polarized? I don't think so. I think this is an electorate that really simply said, we can't make up our minds. We have things we like about each candidate, things we don't like about each candidate.
Sander wants to say something.
Period. You know, I don't think they're deeply polarized.
Bill, yeah, we don't have to rush. We do not have a crisis. And I do not think that the election was as close as people say it was. I think I heard you before. You're absolutely right. But what we need is some time, and I don't think the people in this country think we have a crisis yet, unless we in the media create it, which we often do.
We had an election, and we don't know who the winner is. I'm not saying that there should be a hysterical rush. I think the results should be announced exactly on the timetable of the people of Florida. The procedures should be followed, and then they have to be abided by. You can take it to court, but my guess is the courts will be reluctant to get involved in what is really a political question.
I'm sorry, Bill. I think that may well be true. But it seems to me one thing is sure, the courts will handle this on a super expedited basis. Yeah. They will attend it with the greatest amount of seriousness that is possible. And I think one way or the other, that it will add more, not less.
We're running out of time. Sander, quickly.
If they decide it quickly, what are we going to do for a living?
I'd like to go home.
Floyd Abrams, Sander Van Hoek, Bill Schneider, you may go home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Stay tuned. A special town meeting in Palm Beach We'll hear from the people themselves right on the spot itself. We'll be back tomorrow night with more of the same on Larry King Live. Thanks for joining us, and good night.
Join Jeff Greenfield for a town meeting live from Ground Zero, West Palm Beach, for the latest on the Florida vote, Friday, 10 Eastern on CNN.
Enjoy the freedom to go where you want with a scooter from Plumbrook Mobility Center, around the house, at the mall, or just to enjoy a beautiful day. Our scooters will get you there. We have the largest selection in Michigan with leading brands like Amigo and Pride. At Plumbrook Mobility, we guarantee you the lowest price. We will not be undersold. We also feature previously used scooters, outstanding service, and we back all warranties, parts, and labor. Enjoy the freedom to go where you want with a scooter that fits your needs. Visit Plumbrook Mobility Center on 14 Mile Road between Ryan and DeQuinder.
To accomplish everything you need to do on the ground, often you have to spend time in the sky. Now, what you do both places can help you earn free travel twice as fast. Announcing the new Delta SkyMiles credit card from American Express. It's the only credit card that always gives you double miles at supermarkets, gas stations, drugstores, and home improvement stores. So you'll earn 2 SkyMiles for every $1 you spend.
You can apply now, right over the phone. Just call 1-800-SkyMile.
And when you apply now, you'll receive 5,000 SkyMiles with your first purchase, plus an easy way to double it to 10,000 SkyMiles. With all those miles, it really is a faster way to fly for free.
Call 1-800-SkyMile and apply now. We can take all the information in just a few minutes.
Call today. When you earn double miles with the new Delta SkyMiles credit card, you can get where you want to go twice as fast.
Shannon Steakhouse, a feast for the senses. If you love pampering, you'll love Shannon Steakhouse in Harrison Township. Their specialty is prime-aged beef. Shannon's also offers tantalizing creations from the sea. The atmosphere at Shannon's makes any occasion a special occasion. Shannon Steakhouse, intimate and inviting. 29370 South River Road. Call 810-469-7111 for reservations.
Talk Back Live, weekdays 3 Eastern on CNN. From case, court to gavel, join Greta Van Susteren and Roger Cossack for Burden of Proof, weekdays 12:30 Eastern on CNN.
CNN Special Report, Election 2000, a race too close to call. Governor Bush leads Florida's recount, but the numbers could keep changing for days.
It's frustrating, it's confusing, it's perplexing, and it's all worth it because it's our democracy.
Tonight, a close look at why the presidential election isn't over yet. The questions about a crucial county.
This ballot is Thursday.
Why Palm Beach County is ground zero in the battle for Florida. Plus, the escalating war of words.
I believe that their actions to try to presumptively crown themselves the victors, to try to put in place a transition, run the risk of dividing the American people.
The Democrats who are politicizing and distorting these events risk doing so at the expense of our democracy.
The strategies and potential dangers in the battles being waged by the Bush and Gore campaigns. Tonight, we hear from CNN senior analyst Jeff Greenfield, senior political analyst Bill Schneider, and legal analyst Greta Van Susteren, and a panel of voters from Palm Beach County, Florida. Now, from Washington, CNN's Judy Woodruff, and at CNN election headquarters in Atlanta, Bernard Shaw.
Thank you for joining us. Here we are 2 days after election night, and we still do not know who will be moving into the White House come January.
And it now appears the uncertainty about the winner of the presidential election could continue for days or longer. Republican George W. Bush still holds a slight lead over Democrat Al Gore in Florida, according to recount numbers being compiled by state and county election officials, and in a separate tally being done by the Associated Press. Now, as you can see, the AP's numbers are very close right now, and we're going to keep them on the screen for most of this hour. Also, Governor Bush has nearly overtaken the vice president in the nationwide popular vote. The gap closed to less than 200,000 votes today. By one estimate, there are at least 2.5 million uncounted votes still out there. It could take even longer to resolve the election if recounts are demanded in a number of states where the vote is close or if lawsuits are filed. And that brings us back to Florida. Patty Davis is standing by in Tallahassee with the latest on the painstakingly slow process of recounting.
Well, Bernie, the Associated Press is reporting that 66 of 67 counties have come up with their numbers. They're showing that Governor Bush still leads by 229 votes. They're getting those numbers because they're polling the counties directly. But the official Florida numbers could still be several days, if not a week away. Calling the Florida recount democracy in action, Florida officials announced so far Texas Governor George W. Bush is still ahead of Vice President Al Gore.
A difference of 1,784 votes.
The unofficial certified results are a mix of old and new recounts from 53 of Florida's 67 counties and the old numbers from the rest. The actual recount may not be known until Tuesday, when Florida law requires the results be certified. Still to come, absentee ballots from overseas, which must be counted by November 17th. Former Secretaries of State Warren Christopher and James Baker, Gore and Bush's designated recount observers, met with Florida officials Thursday.
It is certainly the position of Governor George W. Bush that we would like to see this process carried out in a very transparent, open, deliberate way, as expeditiously as possible, of course, given the national interest, but in keeping, fully in keeping with the requirements of the law of Florida.
The Gore campaign highlighted complaints from Palm Beach County voters who say the butterfly ballot there caused them to choose Reform Party candidate Pat Buchanan instead of Al Gore.
We've come to believe that there are serious and substantial irregularities resulting from the ballot used only in one county, that ballot was confusing and illegal.
Now, Florida officials say that they will be working on Veterans Day, normally a federal holiday, but they're going to be here anyways, trying to keep this process moving along. I'm Patty Davis, CNN Live in Tallahassee, Florida.
Thank you, Patty. Adding to the controversy in Florida are demands that thousands of people be allowed to re-vote because of confusion about the design of the ballots that Patty mentioned. It is an especially big issue in that Palm Beach County. Our national correspondent Martin Savage is standing by in West Palm Beach. Martin.
Good evening to you, Judy. It was announced earlier this evening by the election supervisor of this county, Palm Beach County, that there will be another recount that will begin at 9 a.m. on Saturday morning. There are actually going to be two recounts. One will be conducted manually or by hand of 1% of the total votes that were cast in the presidential election in this county. And then there will be a second county-wide recount, that is, that will be conducted by machine. Now, you may ask, why will they only count 1% of the votes by hand? Well, that's about 4,000 ballots. It's a lengthy process, and in a sense, it will give them a sampling to see if there are any gross errors that are discovered. If that is the case, it could lay the groundwork for a complete county-wide recount by hand. Nobody wants to think of that right now at this particular point. It's basically an attempt by county officials to appease both Republican and Democrat requests. Either way, the results are not expected to be announced until sometime on Monday. In the meantime, on the streets of West Palm Beach tonight, people are not only wanting to make sure their votes are counted, but that their voices are heard.
Bush is a cheater. Bush
Voters who went to the polls on Tuesday took to the streets Thursday in West Palm Beach, Florida. More than 1,000 supporters of Vice President Al Gore, led by the Reverend Jesse Jackson, demonstrated outside the downtown government building, demanding another election in the county. Chanting "Gore got more" and "Re-vote," Jackson and the protesters contend the county's election ballot was confusing for voters, a number of whom now believe they incorrectly cast their ballot for the wrong presidential candidate.
The issue here today is not about black and white. It's about wrong and right.
At least 19,000 ballots in Palm Beach County were thrown out by election officials because they had been punched twice for the same race, nullifying them. The Gore campaign contends the ballots in Palm Beach County were illegal. Reform Party presidential candidate Pat Buchanan, who may have benefited from the confusion, blames what he calls inept ballot design.
Certainly, I think we got some votes in Palm Beach County, but I don't doubt the number of those ballots that those votes that were cast for me probably were intended for Vice President Gore.
A number of lawsuits have now been filed in Florida State Court by Palm Beach voters challenging Tuesday's election results. One of those voters, now turned legal challenger, is Andre Fladel.
I went into a place expecting a simple, fair ballot. I got a crossword puzzle.
More than a puzzle, voters in this coastal Florida area are finding themselves in the uncomfortable eye of a growing political hurricane. And outside of the elections board here in Palm Beach County, there is still a crowd of people that are hanging on tonight. They're divided into two groups on both sides of the street, Republicans on one side, Democrats on the other. It is clear in this community, 2 days after the election, like much of the nation, they are still politically divided. Judy?
Martin, do you have a sense of to what extent those folks who are out there have been organized to get there, and how much of this is just a spontaneous show of concern about what's going on?
Well, that is difficult to judge at this particular point. Obviously, earlier in the day, you would have to say that that was an organized event. As for the people that are hanging out here, many of them appear to be posturing for the purposes of the television cameras that are here. But there are also people driving by, waving signs, holding up T-shirts that have now appeared, demanding a revote. Some of that does truly seem to be spontaneous. Judy?
All right. CNN's Martin Savage in West Palm Beach. Thanks. Bernie?
The presidential candidates kept away from microphones today, letting their surrogates do the talking, and that talk is getting angrier. Candy Crowley is with Governor Bush's team in Austin, Texas, and John King is keeping watch on the Gore camp in Nashville. John, do the vice president's people still think he can pull out a victory?
They certainly do, Bernie. Indeed, the more they review Florida law, the more they hear developments like Marty Savage just said about plans for at least a partial recount in Palm Beach County, the more optimistic they grow that they will actually end up being declared the winner of Florida and the winner of the White House. But they don't think this will be over anytime soon. They are plotting a strategy, and this is an increasingly bitter, both political and legal fight. They're plotting a strategy that calls for this to go on perhaps for several weeks. The campaign office here is shutting down. The vice president back in Washington tonight. They will open new offices there. They are trying to raise $3 to $5 million to pay for this legal struggle now in the state of Florida. They believe, A, they want to recount in 4 big counties, 1.8 million votes in those counties, 1.8 million votes cast in those counties. They want those ballots recounted by hand, and they're considering a big legal challenge in Palm Beach County, where there is the dispute over the Buchanan ballot that has been discussed in this program. Meanwhile, on the political front, the Gore team voicing outright anger and bitterness, saying they're annoyed with what they hear out of Austin, Texas. The Gore line is, the vice president still leads in the popular vote, still leads in the electoral college vote, yet out of Austin you hear talk that Governor Bush is thinking of naming a cabinet.
I believe that their actions to try to presumptively crown themselves the victors, to try to put in place a transition, run the risk of dividing the American people and creating a sense of confusion.
Now the campaign office shutting down here. The vice president will go back to Washington. One reason is he will go back to working at the White House. His schedule, his public comments from his team will now come from there, although they are also sending a campaign team of political strategists into Florida to assist the large team of lawyers already there. Again, they think this could go on for several weeks, and they promise not to leave any stone unturned as they review their legal options in the state of Florida. Bernie?
John, please stand by for just a moment. We go now to Candy Crowley in Austin, where this afternoon 3 top officials of Governor Bush's campaign team returned fire on the Democrats.
Bernie, you're absolutely